Lexi wanted just one thing: to relax. As she walked home, all she could think about was stripping off her clothes, collapsing onto the couch, and sleeping for 10 hours straight. It would be even better to sleep for a whole day without anyone bothering her. Lexi's head was throbbing horribly, and with each breath, the pain seemed to intensify. Coming home, undressing, and sleeping, simple human joys. As long as everything was okay with Archie. Otherwise, sleep would be out of the question, but her hopes were dashed as soon as she stepped through the door. Her mother-in-law, Selena, pounced on her. "Lexi, how much longer can this go on? I am an elderly person after all. I don't have the strength to keep up with everything. It's almost 10 o'clock. Selena complained. Lexi kicked off her high-heeled shoes and closed her eyes in pleasure. The shoes mercilessly pinched her feet, and she had been on her feet almost all day. She couldn't wear sneakers to work. After all, she was a lawyer, and she had to look the part, especially if she wanted to build a successful career. And Lexi wanted that very much. So much time wasted already, and the Murray case was crucial for her. If she won the case, there would be some very pleasant prospects ahead. Murray had taken a risk by choosing Lexi. She couldn't let her down, under no circumstances. That meant she had to conduct the defense in court perfectly, and she had to look impeccable while doing it. "What's wrong?" Lexi wiggled her toes, feeling invisible needles pricking them. She needed to find different shoes. Good footwear was terribly expensive, and she didn't have the money yet. Bradley promised to give her some money, but he hadn't. He said his fee was being delayed. Something wasn't quite right with him lately. Maybe she could borrow some from Zoe. She often said that Lexi could ask her for help. It seemed like she might have to. Although Lexi hated borrowing money, not because she had to pay it back. She just didn't like feeling dependent on anyone. She had always dreamed of being strong, successful, and, most importantly, independent. It just wasn't working out very well at the moment. "Archie's been crying all day." Selena frowned. "It seems like he has a fever. Perhaps we should call the doctor." "I'll take care of it," Lexi said. Her head was pounding even harder now. "He hasn't been eating well." Her mother-in-law continued to complain. "I tried calling you, but couldn't get through." Lexi felt ashamed. She had indeed put her phone on silent mode, solely to avoid constant calls from Selena. She was grateful to her mother-in-law, but sometimes she could be terribly irritating. Lexi was ashamed of this feeling and was afraid to admit it even to herself. But she sincerely couldn't understand why a woman who raised a son and seemed quite successful couldn't simply feed the baby from a bottle or change his diaper without consulting Lexi first, although she knew the reason. After all, her child was special. Selena was afraid of doing something wrong, as if Lexi herself wasn't scared. This fear, it was born alongside Archie and grew as rapidly as he did. In a couple of decades, Lexi wouldn't have any other feelings left besides this fear. "I'll take care of everything," Lexi said, looking at herself in the mirror. Well, she didn't look great. Dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept all night, studying the case materials. Her skin was pale, her eyes nervously gleaming. How many cups of coffee had she had today? 5 or 6, no less. A successful lawyer shouldn't look like this. Maybe she should put on some kind of mask. Oh well, of course, a cheap mask would surely erase the signs of fatigue and weeks of sleep deprivation and stress from Lexi's face. But it seemed like the case was moving in the right direction. As long as they won, it would be a real feather in her cap. It would pave the way for new cases and new opportunities. Lexi closed her eyes for a moment, then smiled at Selena. "I'll go to my son. Do we have dinner? I'm terribly hungry." "It's potatoes and sausages." Selena pursed her lips. "I didn't have time to cook." "That's fine too," Lexi murmured. She went to her son. He was sound asleep, lying on his back with his arms spread out. Lexi gently ran her palm over his forehead. It seemed like he didn't have a fever. Selena was too anxious, always thinking that Archie was ill with something, and that it was inevitably fatal. It had been like this ever since she moved in with Lexi. That was almost 6 months ago. Careful not to wake the child, Lexi changed into her pajamas and went to wash her hands. Then she would have dinner. Selena had already set out the potatoes. She even made tea, just the way Lexi liked it, green with lemon. She felt ashamed of her thoughts about her mother-in-law. After all, she did care about her. She tried her best. "So how's Archie?" the woman asked, sitting across from Lexi. "Does he have a fever?" "No, he doesn't," Lexi replied, starting to eat. Her stomach immediately growled. It seemed like she hadn't eaten anything today. Well, coffee didn't count, but at least she had lost weight. Shed all the pounds she gained during pregnancy. You had to find your own silver linings in everything. "Lexi, are you working again tomorrow?" "Yes, I am," she sighed. "It's a tough case, and I need to win it. It's really important. You understand?" "I understand," Selena replied, sounding offended. "So, I'll be left alone with Archie again. If everything goes well, I'll definitely hire a nanny," Lexi promised. "So you can rest a little." "I understand everything, really, Selena, thank you." In response, the woman tapped her fingers on the table, then smiled. "Oh, come on, dear, I understand everything too. I just grumble like an old lady. Don't mind me. Bradley is all work too. He just lives separately. I can't grumble at him. You get all of it." Lexi nodded. What else could she say? Yes, after Archie was born, Bradley left. No, they didn't divorce, and they didn't plan to either. Bradley just said it was too hard for him. Lexi even understood him. The man had plans, dreams, a good family, wealth, children, healthy children to be proud of. But Archie was born with Down syndrome. Their Archie was a special child. Bradley didn't abandon her. He just lives in a rented apartment, saying he needs time. He should have said how much time he needed. That would have been easier. Of course, with Archie, it was really tough. He cried a lot, didn't sleep at night. The schedule just wouldn't settle. Doctors said it was normal. Dealing with such children was harder than with typical ones. But neither Lexi nor Bradley found it any easier because of that. The woman finished her dinner, sent her mother-in-law to watch TV, and herself washed the dishes and swept the floor in the kitchen. She couldn't use the vacuum cleaner. Archie would start crying. Well, at least her headache had almost gone away. The wonders potatoes and sausages could do. Archie, her poor special little boy. Lexi adored her son to tears, with some strange animal feeling she couldn't compare to anything. But at the same time, she realized he could ruin her life. No one knew what would happen next. No one could say how he would develop. Maybe he would remain a 5-year-old for life. Or maybe he would finish school. One doctor told her straight. Her son's development would depend on how much money she invested in him. Speech therapists, developmental activities, horse therapy, art therapy, swimming with dolphins. Lexi explored the options, and all the specialists promised excellent results, charging hefty fees for their services. So, Lexi had to work herself to exhaustion to try everything possible so that her son could live a normal life in the future. Well, or almost normal. She desperately wanted to sleep, but she had to study some materials on the Murray case. A complex case, even a bit unpleasant. Layla Murray, a businesswoman, the owner of a chain of beauty salons, a statuesque, 40-year-old, beautiful woman. Long hair, always flowing, styled with neat curls. A face without any signs of wrinkles. Layla couldn't be more than 25. Perfect figure, with not an ounce of excess fat. Active, energetic, a go-getter. The kind of person Lexi herself would like to be. The master of life. A woman to look up to. But Layla wasn't lucky in her family life. Recently, she decided to divorce her husband, Wayne Murray. Naturally, Her spouse also had his own business, trading in cars. However, when they got married, her husband had nothing. Layla literally brought him up, helped with money, used her connections, and supported him morally. Her husband's affairs quickly took off. Wayne opened 2 salons and felt like a serious and important person. And then Layla found out he was cheating on her. At first, it was just suspicions. Late returns home, strange behavior, long hours he spent in the bathroom with his phone. The woman hired detectives, and they confirmed that, yes, Wayne had someone else. Perhaps Layla would have let Wayne go, allowed him to keep the business and the expensive car. But the other woman turned out to be her close friend who often visited their home. Layla couldn't tolerate such betrayal, and she decided she would take everything from Wayne. And that's where Lexi was supposed to help her. Naturally, the husband didn't want to give his almost ex-wife a penny. It had to be proven that without Layla, he wouldn't have achieved such success, that his entire business was built solely on her funds. Wayne claimed that Layla helped him, but insignificantly. In turn, he intended to take away from her the apartment purchased during the marriage. More precisely, not take away, but divide it in half. The apartment was huge, in an elite area, with a unique layout. It was a coveted piece that Wayne didn't want to part with. And today, Lexi suddenly found out that Wayne had been stealing money from his wife, secretly transferring funds from their joint accounts to his own, of which Layla wasn't even aware. This could be an excellent argument for the judge. Plus, there were official transactions. When Wayne was just starting his business, Layla regularly transferred large sums to him. He couldn't object. All the documents confirming this fact were in Lexi's hands. The chances of winning the case were enormous. They just had to not mess it up. Layla promised Lexi that she wouldn't abandon her. She would recommend her to her friends. And the woman had influential friends. In this circle, divorces were very common. Husbands didn't want to share jointly acquired property with their wives. Cars, apartments, huge bank accounts. And wives, in turn, wanted compensation for the years spent in a marriage that ended in divorce. And if Lexi entered this circle, she would have money. And money meant that Archie would have the best teachers, the best doctors, and the opportunity to access excellent medical professionals, thanks to whom he could live a normal, well, or almost normal life in the future. Lexi settled on the bed with her laptop on her lap and immersed herself in the case materials. She desperately wanted to sleep. Just a little more. Hopefully, Archie wouldn't wake her up today. Please, baby, let mommy sleep, or she'll doze off right in the courtroom. And then there goes her brilliant career as a family lawyer. After working for a while, Lexi fed her son and put him down to rest. He didn't seem too cranky today. The little one fell asleep almost immediately and hardly made a peep. Finally, she lay down herself, but sleep wouldn't come. It happens sometimes. You're so tired that you can't fall asleep. Or maybe it was the liters of coffee she drank. Plus, Bradley didn't call, even though he promised. He forgot. He's fine. He has the luxury of forgetting about his son. But Lexi doesn't have that luxury. She couldn't imagine what she would do without Selena. She'd probably lose her mind. She tried to understand Bradley, to see things from his perspective. But sometimes, when she was especially exhausted, she couldn't. But it all started so well. Such plans, such dreams. She met Bradley in her first year of college. She liked him right away. Yes, he was short, wore glasses. Clearly not the type of guy who didn't know how to handle girls, but he was so interesting to be with. Well-read, knowledgeable about modern cinema, loving hikes and music. Lexi quickly realized she was in love with Bradley. From the first year until graduation, they sat at the same desk. In the second year, they were assigned to different groups, and they even wrote petitions to the dean to stay together. In the dean's office, they were dubbed the sweet couple, but they weren't separated. In their third year, Bradley introduced Lexi to his mom. He declared right away, "Mom, this is my future wife." Selena smiled then. "Well, if she's your wife, then I guess I'm your future mother-in-law." Lexi. What Lexi loved most was that she and Bradley shared a common goal in life: to build their careers. They both wanted to become successful lawyers. Lexi specializes in family law, while Bradley specializes in criminal law. Lexi understood that Bradley was smarter and more talented than her, and she didn't worry about it at all. On the contrary, she was glad he was so wonderful. She was proud of his achievements and believed that he would undoubtedly achieve his goals, of course, with her help. They also dreamed of having at least 3 children. They were both only children in their families and had dreamed of having siblings all their childhood. Bradley said they would live in a house. It's better than living in a concrete box and listening to the neighbors make noise from morning till night. Lexi knew for sure that's how it would be. They found each other, 2 halves of one whole, and together, they would achieve everything they desired. After graduating from university, they got married. The wedding was modest. The young couple didn't have money, so their parents paid for everything. But Lexi still remembered that day with a smile. Her dress, which constantly wrinkled and uncomfortably squeezed her waist because of the tight corset. The floor-length veil that Bradley managed to step on and tear. The strange host who played only 80s hits, causing bewilderment among the young guests. At first, Lexi thought everything was not going according to plan. She even shed a few tears outside the restaurant. But then Zoe, her best friend from school, approached her and said, "Lexi, don't cry. There's a saying that if the wedding doesn't go as planned, then married life will definitely be happy." Lexi didn't know if her friend made up that saying or if it really existed. She wiped away her running mascara, powdered her face, and returned to the guests to dance to retro hits. The young couple was lucky with housing. Lexi had her own apartment inherited from her grandfather. Her grandfather died when Lexi was only 5, and her parents decided that the apartment should go to their daughter. At 18, Lexi had to decide whether to move or sell the apartment. That's when she met Bradley. Naturally, the question of selling it was no longer relevant. When they returned home after the wedding, the newlywed husband declared that he wanted to observe the tradition and carry the bride over the threshold. Lexi was skeptical about this idea. She weighed more than Bradley and doubted he could handle such a task. But she didn't want to hurt his feelings. Bradley squatted down and lifted Lexi onto his arms. She wrapped her arms around his neck, closing her eyes in fear. He carried her over the threshold. Though Lexi bumped her head on the door frame, it was a minor issue. The main thing was that their new life had begun, and it would surely be just as they had dreamed. Bradley's career quickly took off. He was smart, talented, and attentive to details. He wasn't afraid to take on the most complex cases, even those rejected by renowned lawyers. Meanwhile, things were not going well for Lexi. She suffered from her own indecisiveness. Her first thought was not about prospects, but about the possibility of making a mistake. So, at the agency where she worked, they only gave her the simplest cases, tasks even suitable for students. She seemed to understand that she was capable of more, but her fear was too strong. The fear of making a mistake. Bradley even scolded her for it. "Lexi, our profession involves risk. Are you afraid to take risks?" "Yes, I am." She nodded. "But everyone has to start somewhere. I'll practice and move on to something more challenging." "You'll never believe in yourself," he sighed. "You'll just be messing around instead of working on your own name." Eventually, it was decided that Bradley would be the main breadwinner in the family. He would focus on his career, while Lexi would work just to maintain her qualifications. But her main occupation would be the home and children. After 5 years, they saved up for an apartment. They decided to buy a 3-bedroom apartment, planning for the future because they wanted at least 3 children. The renovation took another year. Lexi wandered around the city, choosing wallpaper, paint, and plaster, while Bradley spent whole days traveling to courts and detention centers. Finally, the dream apartment was ready. Lexi couldn't believe her happiness. Many of their peers still lived with their parents or in rented apartments. But they had their own, bought without a mortgage or loans, and it was a 3-bedroom apartment. So far, everything was going according to plan, and the next item on this plan was their little one. Lexi had no doubt that everything would work out right away. At least that's how it had been for them before. She couldn't understand what could go wrong. They were both young, healthy, and both wanted a child, but pregnancy didn't happen. After a year of unsuccessful attempts, Lexi went to see a doctor. They couldn't find any problems with her, so the young wife persuaded Bradley to get checked as well. Again, with no results. The doctors told them to keep trying and not to be afraid. Lexi was terribly afraid that she might be infertile. What if the doctors found something? What then? Adopt a baby. She could never love an adopted child as much as her own. IVF or a surrogate mother. The first option raised serious concerns, and the second was morally unacceptable to Lexi. She wanted to experience pregnancy herself, to feel the baby moving inside her, to sing lullabies to it at night, to wear funny but cute maternity clothes. Once, she went to the store with her mother-in-law. Selena needed a new jacket, and Lexi offered to accompany her. Did you have any women's issues? Or Bradley's father, for example? Lexi dared to ask. Her mother-in-law looked at her, puzzled. My dear, what are you talking about? Well, you gave birth late, at 30. I'm sorry for asking. I'm just really worried, Selena. The woman turned away. I didn't have any problems. And Wayne, Bradley's father, didn't either. We just didn't want to rush things. And when we decided, everything worked out right away. So, don't stress yourself out. For heaven's sake. Lexi then thought that Selena wasn't entirely honest with her. Or was it just her imagination? After all, the topic wasn't easy, and she and Selena were never particularly close. Finally, Lexi became pregnant. She was overjoyed. She had worried for nothing. She had cried nights for nothing. Soon she would be a mother, the best mother in the world. And Bradley would be a wonderful father. He would stroke her belly, kiss it when he came home from work, even when there wasn't much of a belly to see yet. By the 3rd month, Lexi started wearing maternity clothes to work just because she wanted everyone to know about the new little life inside her. Her colleagues laughed at her, but in a friendly way. They gave her baby clothes, advised her on which maternity hospital to choose. Lexi felt like the world had become brighter and more beautiful. And all because she had a future son or daughter inside her belly. Did all women feel this way? She was ready to work pregnant for the rest of her life, just to see the world so beautiful and to experience this magical feeling. The anticipation of a miracle. The time of pregnancy was remembered by Lexi as the best in her life. Later, when Archie was already born, she often recalled those days and wondered why she had no premonitions. Why didn't her heart tell her that something inside her wasn't right? That the baby she carried under her heart would be different? Lexi even refused some tests. She and Bradley didn't want to know if it would be a boy or a girl. And when they were told to undergo additional tests after an ultrasound, they just went home. Lexi was sure that everything was fine with her and the baby too. And the tests carried certain risks that scared her. Why take risks when she would love the child no matter what? And what could go wrong? They were young. There were no cases of hereditary diseases in Bradley's or Lexi's families. So, they just needed to wait and enjoy the moment. After Archie was born, Lexi often thought about what she would do if the doctors told her that the baby had Down syndrome. And she realized that she wouldn't do absolutely anything. She couldn't. There was too much love in her for that little living lump, which grew in her belly, which kicked her, and sometimes amusingly hiccuped. She wouldn't have had an abortion and wouldn't have given up her son under any circumstances. Only perhaps, she would have prepared in advance for how her life would change. Or is it impossible to prepare for it at all? She didn't know. Lexi's childbirth went smoothly, although she expected it to be much worse and scarier. She had read horror stories on internet forums where mothers scared each other with terrible tales. In reality, she just had to gather all her strength and do everything the doctors said, and think that it would all be over soon and she would hold her baby in her arms. Archie didn't cry when he was born. He didn't cry for a long time. They took him away. The newborn table was behind Lexi's head, and she couldn't see what was happening with her baby. She cried, begged to tell her the truth. She tried to get up, but they held her and persuaded her to wait a little longer. When Archie cried, Lexi felt such relief as she had never felt in her life. Then they showed her the baby. He was strange, too small, red, with slit eyes. And then she was told that some incomprehensible tests might be needed because her son, apparently, had Down syndrome. Down syndrome? How could that be? It usually only happens to women over 40. And they led a healthy lifestyle. They didn't drink or smoke. She took the vitamins prescribed by the doctors, did yoga, worked a lot with Bradley. It couldn't be. The diagnosis couldn't be true. However, the syndrome was confirmed a week later. Definitively, there could be no doubt. Lexi herself saw that her child was not like everyone else. His eyes, slightly slanted, seemed particularly strange. He didn't want to breastfeed, was weaker and more lethargic compared to other children. Upon learning of their son's diagnosis, Bradley declared that everything would be fine, that they would handle it together, that he would never leave Lexi and Archie. But through Bradley's eyes, Lexi could see his bitterness, his disappointment, and fear. However, her mother-in-law didn't come to visit the grandson at all. Bradley said she wasn't ready yet, too anxious. Lexi suffered from a sense of guilt, resentment towards the world, and disappointment in herself. She wondered what she had done wrong. But nothing came to mind, and the doctors spoke incomprehensible words that only confused her further. Only the nurse, Wendy, managed to calm her down. While tidying up the room, she approached Lexi, who was rocking Archie, and smiled. "He's such a cutie," Wendy said. "Cutie," sighed Lexi. "But he has Down syndrome. He will never be like everyone else. Probably because of me." Tears welled up in the young woman's eyes. Lexi turned away from the nurse, not wanting to show her weakness. Lexi often cried after giving birth, and sometimes it came on suddenly. She cried in her soul when feeding the baby, when simply standing by the window. Would it always be like this now? "Oh, what's wrong with you?" Wendy waved her hand. "We have a guy in our village with Down syndrome too." "So what? He has Down syndrome. They've made up all sorts of words to scare people. He grew up to be a good guy, finished school. You know how he draws. Seems simple, but city folks come and buy his works. They say he has some kind of unusual view of the world. His mom even built a new house with that money. He grew up to be a good guy, loves to hug. You know, it's better to have him than mine. My son started drinking at 16 and still can't stop. And there are no syndromes. Rejoice, mother. You've given birth to an angel." These simple, naive words somehow magically influenced Lexi. And indeed, why was she worrying? There were no syndromes, only people. And Archie, he was just as much a human being as she was. Yes, he was special, but the baby was healthy. All the tests were done. The heart defect that Lexi dreaded was ruled out. And anyway, people like Archie can now go to school, start families, and engage in creativity. He was her son, the son of her beloved husband Bradley, the only, unique, and the best son in the world. And whatever syndrome he had, it didn't matter. And her husband was by her side. That shouldn't be forgotten. Together, they would overcome any obstacles. However, Lexi was mistaken about one thing. It quickly became apparent that Bradley didn't want to overcome any obstacles. He wanted everything to stay the same. Archie irritated him. Lexi understood this, although Bradley didn't directly say it. He only complained that he couldn't work when Archie was fussing. He didn't approach the child, even avoided talking about him. And her mother-in-law only visited once. She came, quickly drank tea, and left without holding her grandson. Perhaps she didn't want or need such a grandson. How could she brag about him to her friends, whose grandchildren were healthy? Lexi felt like she had let everyone down. So, 3 months passed. 3 agonizing months for her. She had to not only get used to her new role, but also learn to live with the thought that her child was not like everyone else. Not the one she had expected. And she was also getting used to this new overwhelming love that had emerged in her heart. She adored Archie. She would sit by her son's crib and admire how he slept, stroke his head, kiss his tiny, funny feet. And she almost cried from the feeling that love seemed to ache in her heart. I wonder, is it like this for everyone? Or just for mothers of children who were born with differences? After all, love was mixed with pity, fear for the future, and a sense of uncertainty. But love still outweighed everything else. Lexi hoped that her husband, Bradley, would eventually feel something similar. But instead, he once said that they needed to talk. Lexi, I don't even know where to start, but I can't go on like this anymore. I need to focus on work. There are several complex cases right now. If we win, I'll reach a new level. And what are you suggesting? Lexi's tone cooled. Inside her, there was complete chaos from this strange conversation. Is he going to tell her they need to get divorced? No one needs a defective wife who couldn't give birth to a healthy baby. The thing is, I want to rent an apartment near you, Bradley replied. I'll come on weekends and live there the rest of the time. Lexi, I love you and Archie, but right now I need to work a lot, so that we can give our son what he needs. So, wait, are we going to live separately? Lexi asked. Not separately. Lexi, I need personal space. He looked guilty at his wife. I can't work here at all. You have to understand, it's hard for me. I work nights. I can't think during the day. They even ask at work what's wrong with me. They suggest taking a vacation. I can't take a vacation right now. I'll have to pass on my cases. It will affect my reputation. You know, I haven't lost a single case yet, Lexi. And how long will you be renting an apartment and living separately from us? Bradley, I won't be able to cope alone, not for long. The man promised, maybe a couple of months, until I finish the client's cases. And then everything will be as before. I'm telling you, I'll come, I'll help, and I learn money. You'll have money. I promise. Yes, she agreed then. She understood Bradley herself. After all, she often wanted to rest too. Sometimes Archie cried so long and couldn't calm down, no matter what she did. At such moments, she felt like a terrible mother. She just wanted to put him in his crib and leave the house, buy a train ticket, and go somewhere. She had learned to forgive herself for such thoughts. She was a good mother. She just got very tired. But Bradley had the opportunity to rest, and she had to give it to him. Because she was his better half. Because Lexi loved Bradley. Because he worked a lot for her and for their son, Archie. And in the future, she would be rewarded for her efforts. Bradley would definitely appreciate that she let him go, that she gave him the opportunity to focus on work. The husband left. The first week was driving Lexi crazy. Before, Bradley sometimes helped her, but now she was left alone. Being confined within 4 walls depressed Lexi. Sometimes she wouldn't wash her hair for weeks, surviving on sandwiches and instant noodles. She only went to the store for diapers and baby formula. Then Selena came to visit her. She came and offered to stay. Lexi, I didn't even know Bradley did this. He just told me recently. I thought about it and decided that I will help you, Lexi. She wanted to refuse, saying she could handle it. But the woman understood that she couldn't. Even if her mother-in-law just cooked soup and cleaned the apartment, it would still be invaluable help. Selena undressed and went to her grandson. She took him in her arms, tears glistening in her eyes. Oh, Lexi, if you only knew. Knew what? She asked softly. What sin did I commit back then? Forgive me for behaving like that. I looked at Archie and remembered. What are you talking about? I don't understand. And Selena told Lexi that once she had a special child, right after Bradley, she and her husband dreamed of twins, thinking it would be easier. One child could wear out things for the other, and they could play together. Moreover, Selena thought that one child would inevitably grow up to be a spoiled egoist. But two would be different. They would know what teamwork was, and they would know how to share. Lexi, my second son was born right after Bradley, the woman said quietly. Only he wasn't like Archie. He had cry-do-chat syndrome, it seems. I decided to keep him, but my husband couldn't take it. We lived together for another 6 months, and then he left, leaving only a note. There were only a few words there, saying that he couldn't take it anymore. Selena fell silent. It was evident that it was hard for her to talk about it. And what happened to that child in the end? Lexi asked. He died. A year later. It was something with his heart. There weren't any ultrasounds or MRIs back then. And my husband never came back to me. He found another woman and left. At first, he called, asked about the baby. But then he stopped calling altogether. I remembered everything that happened to me back then. But I thought Bradley would behave differently. Well, he didn't leave me, Lexi objected. He just has a lot of work. How can you work when there's a little child in the house? Well, I hope Bradley has enough sense. Selena frowned. But, my dear girl, you know you can always rely on me. Tell me what to do, and I'm ready to help. Selena significantly eased Lexi's life. The woman cleaned, went to the store, and looked after Archie when Lexi left the house. Gradually, she began to bond with her grandson. She sang him songs, even read books. She believed that this would help him develop better, but she was very afraid for him. Whenever Archie sneezed or coughed, Selena would immediately become anxious. Lexi understood the nature of this anxiety. Her mother-in-law also had a special child, and he died in her arms. So now she's afraid for her grandson. However, Selena's anxiety was offset by the fact that she helped Lexi and even allowed her to go to work when Archie was only 6 months old. It was a necessary measure. Bradley started having problems. He lost a serious case, and his client got a huge sentence. Naturally, this affected his reputation. And the competition in the legal world is serious. So Bradley wasn't making much money, but Lexi had some free time now. She even started going for walks alone, though Selena called her every 10 minutes. But that was bearable. One day, Lexi decided to go for a walk with Zoe, her best friend. They went to a cafe. Lexi enjoyed her freedom, the warm day, and herbal tea. She really wanted coffee, a huge cup with foam and cinnamon. But as long as she breastfed Archie, there was no talk of coffee. Lexi envied Zoe, who was sipping her latte. I'll finish breastfeeding, buy a bottle of wine, sighed Lexi, and drink it in one gulp. And then I'll eat a pack of chips, because all I eat is chicken breast and rice. Why? Wondered Zoe, who didn't have children yet. Because Archie has allergies. Lexi took a sip of tea. So I'm on a strict diet. And there's no joy in life now. Bradley has left. Where did he go? Zoe raised her eyebrows. You didn't tell me. I didn't want to confess. Lexi put the cup on the table and stared out the window. Why was it so hard to talk about Bradley's decision even to her closest friend? Come on, spill it. Zoe said. Are you getting divorced? No, of course not. Are you kidding me? It's just that it's stuff with Archie. Bradley decided to live separately for a while. He's living nearby, coming over, helping out often. Until he sorts out his complicated matters, it'll be like this. But somehow, I feel hurt. Why is it all on me? And Bradley only sends money now. And even that's not frequent anymore. He's got some issues. He lost a case. His client got a full sentence. You understand, for Bradley, it's a really bad outcome. Lexi explained. Lexi expected her friend to support her. But Zoe's reaction was unexpected. You've got some nerve, Lexi, she declared. What do you mean? How so? Lexi's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Why would you think that, Lexi? You're used to everyone taking care of you. Zoe started. Your parents gave you your apartment. And I'm working my ass off for this damn mortgage. Your husband always earned a lot. And I'm alone. Can't find anyone. And your Bradley has been with you since college. Sure, he needs to work. And it's hard with your Archie, Lexi. Bradley didn't divorce you, did he? Your mother-in-law came and won't leave your grandson alone. She's practically a free nanny. And here you are complaining. Zoe, you don't understand. You don't have your own kids. Oh, of course. Zoe made a significant pause. There was triumph in her eyes. Don't whine, friend, or Bradley will decide to leave you. Men are like that. Sick women and children are rarely needed by them. That's the truth of life. But Bradley won't leave you, so bear with it, dear. Otherwise, he'll leave you, and you won't even have time to squeak. You have such a wonderful man. Smart, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. You just have to sit, shut up, and smile. Just don't scare him off. Well, I don't know, Zoe. With such an approach, it's scary to even start a relationship. What about sharing both joy and sorrow? What do you say about that, Zoe? That's fairy tales. Zoe finished her coffee. In joy, yes, but in sorrow, it depends on the woman. Don't forget, there are many hunters for guys like Bradley. Beauty is not the main thing now. Intelligences. He's earning. He is. And you've let yourself go. When was the last time you had a haircut? What about a manicure? He could leave just like that, and you won't even have time to blink. After the conversation with her friend, Lexi was left with a heavy feeling. Perhaps Zoe was right about something. Lexi resents Bradley for something. Demands attention when he needs to focus on work. She demands money, but she doesn't need the money for herself. She spends it all on Archie. If necessary, she can even provide receipts. Diapers, vitamins, formula, clothes. But still, she needs Bradley not to even think about leaving. And Lexi promised herself that she would delight him and stop complaining about her tough life. A smile and a flourishing appearance. When Archie turned 6 months old, Lexi went back to work. They were catastrophically short of money. And she was lucky. Layla Murray chose her as her lawyer. And she couldn't fail this case. Simply couldn't. She didn't have the right to. Too much depended on it in her life. And in her son's life. There were some advantages to living separately from Bradley. For example, now they could go on dates again, like they used to while studying at university. Though Lexi sometimes felt uncomfortable that Bradley avoided talking about their son, grew gloomy, tried to change the subject, or just sat with a vacant look. She pitied him. Yes, it's hard to accept such things. She needs to give him time. She must be strong for their family. Bradley rarely visited their son, came once a week, held Archie in his arms, and then handed him over to either Lexi or his mother. Nothing. When Archie grows up, it will get easier. It's like that for men, not interested in them when the child is little. But when Archie starts walking, talking, playing, then attachment will develop. Working on the Murray case wasn't easy for Lexi. Her husband tried to portray himself as a victim, arguing that he was almost forced to cheat. But still, Lexi prevailed. Her client won the case. Lexi couldn't believe what had happened. With all her uncertainty, with her fear of making a mistake, she won. After the trial, Layla offered to drive her home in her luxurious car. You did great. I wasn't mistaken, Layla declared. Listen, why did you choose me? Asked Lexi. There are more experienced lawyers out there. It's intuition. Layla smirked. I've believed in intuition since childhood. It helps me in business, believe it or not. I always sense who's worth dealing with and who's not. And there was something else. What? Lexi was surprised. Layla suddenly turned to her and looked her straight in the eye. I gathered information about you. I know about your child. Your colleagues told me. I wanted to give you a chance. My brother has cerebral palsy. I know how hard it is. So, honestly, my heart skipped a beat. And here's the result. You're a great lawyer. Together we defeated my unfaithful husband. Sorry about your brother. Lexi sighed. Oh, it's fine. I don't like it when people sympathize with me, Layla said. And everything's fine with my brother, Lexi. He lives in Belgium. Works as a programmer. Lexi, I want to invite you to a party. We're having a corporate event to celebrate the 10th anniversary of my salon network. There will be many important people. A nice restaurant, live music, relax there. Consider it an additional reward for your brilliant work. And thanks again for your professionalism, Lexi. Oh, it's kind of awkward. The lawyer stammered. I've never been to such parties. Lexi, with this attitude, you won't achieve anything. Layla laughed. Honestly, you are talented, but it's like you're afraid of something. Fear in your eyes. But it disappeared in court. You acted so confidently. I just fell in love with you. Get rid of the fear and come to our celebration, Lexi. You'll be my honored guest. Make connections there, finally. And if not, just take a break from everyday life. Next Sunday at Monte Cristo restaurant. You're already on the guest list. And if we had lost the trial, then what? Lexi smiled. Well, then I would have told them to strike you off. Layla shrugged. But we won. And we left that scoundrel without a chance. Just as I wanted. So, I'm waiting for you, Lexi. Returning home, she embraced Selena tightly. We won the case. Lexi exclaimed. Oh, that's great. Selena patted Lexi on the back. Well done. All your efforts paid off. By the way, Archie didn't eat well again. I don't know what to do, Lexi. I'll feed him. The woman swiftly came back down to earth. What is she even thinking about? Some party at Monte Cristo. She needs to be with her child, not attending fancy events. Bradley's reaction to her success was strange. Seemingly happy, but somewhat restrained. Well, it's good, but we need to move on to more complex cases, dear, he said. Bradley, this was the most challenging thing I've ever done. Business, money, the apartment. Lexi argued. Divorces are simple. Her husband chuckled. But anyway, congratulations. Everyone starts somewhere. Bradley, you seem dissatisfied. Lexi noticed. Well, never mind. Let's go celebrate on Saturday. I can't, he replied. I need to work a bit. It's a complicated case. Several volumes. I need to study everything. Plus, I have to visit the detention center. Talk to the client. Well, Bradley, what's wrong? Lexi felt disappointed. It's just a kind of unpleasant feeling, he admitted. After all, something should remain for a man after a divorce. Wait, but he cheated. Lexi frowned. He stole her money. He practically used her. It seems you've become a feminist. Bradley laughed. And anyway, I believe that both parties are always to blame in infidelity. The one who cheats and the one who drove them to it. Understand, but she didn't drive him to anything. Lexi scowled. He decided this on his own. He wanted some excitement. And with her friend, no less. And anyway, if he had fallen in love with someone else, he should have been brave, admitted it honestly, and left. If he had done that, Layla would have accepted it and let him go. Oh, come on. I don't want to discuss this, Lexi. The man hurriedly said. Let's leave it for now. I might drop by. Maybe Monday evening. What's wrong with him? He's probably tired. The rest of the evening was filled with pleasant business. Archie behaved like a little angel, smiling, not fussing, and eating well. Lexi's colleagues called to congratulate her on the successful conclusion of the case. Even her boss, Mr. Mitchell, called and said he already had a client he would recommend Lexi to. It's a classic case, Lexi. The father wants to sue for custody as retaliation against the mother for having the audacity to leave him. Just the kind you like. Family drama, Mr. Mitchell said. I think you'll handle it. By the way, there's an interesting detail. The apartment is registered in the wife's name and with her money. I think the man wants to get the apartment and exchange it for custody of the child. How awful. Lexi muttered. She imagined what it would be like if someone wanted to take Archie away from her. She'd probably go insane and tear the offender apart with her bare hands in a fit of madness. Think about it, her boss said. I'll send you the materials by email. But for now, relax. I'm proud of you, Lexi. Lexi was in a great mood. She had won, and it seemed like she would go to the party after all. She really wanted to go. Why not? She deserved some fun. Lexi felt like Cinderella going to the ball. Too bad she wouldn't meet her Prince Charming. She already had hers, but she could dance until morning. At least, the following week, Lexi decided to dedicate to relaxation. Of course, she continued to go to work, but mainly helped her colleagues and dealt with paperwork. She left home on time, slept at night instead of studying case materials. Some new energy had appeared from somewhere. The victory in the Murray case inspired Lexi, made her believe in herself. She spent a lot of time with Archie, did a deep clean with Selena, and even bought a dress for the upcoming party. Simple, not evening wear. Elegant, but suitable for work. Trapezoidal, black, knee-length, with a white lace collar. Although Selena criticized her choice, saying Lexi looked like a prim schoolgirl in the dress. It's fine. Lexi laughed. I'll wear white gloves from the wedding and do my hair. It'll be just right. She felt a bit disappointed that she hadn't seen Bradley. He was working a lot, not even stopping by to see their child. But Lexi didn't hold it against him. She knew how demanding his job could be. Sometimes lawyers didn't sleep for days to build the right defense strategy and study all the evidence. They had to anticipate how they would respond to the prosecutor's questions and find weaknesses in the defendant's arguments. Bradley always worked out every detail, but despite all this, Lexi terribly missed her husband. Well, this rough patch in her life would soon be over. They would be a family of 3 again. Her, Bradley, and their son Archie. And then, who knows, maybe they would want a second baby. Lexi was afraid of that, but the doctors assured her that what happened was a coincidence and there was no reason to think that something would be wrong with their second child. And she definitely wouldn't refuse the tests this time. She called her husband, but their conversations were dry and short. He asked about Archie, then said goodbye to Lexi. She wished everything would sort itself out soon. It's a shame Bradley wants to be strong. Lexi desperately wanted to support him, explained that one lost case didn't mean the end of his career, but he wouldn't allow it. That's just how he was. But he was still such a wonderful man. Not like Lexi. Saturday was approaching. On Saturday, Lexi was supposed to go to the Monte Cristo restaurant. She was terribly nervous, wanting to look her best. She went to the beauty salon and had her long hair trimmed. The stylist suggested a cascade cut. Lexi agreed, which she regretted terribly afterward. Her hair just wouldn't cooperate, strands sticking out of her hairstyle. To top it off, a pimple popped up on her cheek. Lexi even considered not going. Messy hair, with a pimple, like she wasn't a successful lawyer but some teenager. But Selena eventually convinced her to attend the party. Sweetie, you need to relax a bit, she said, listening to Lexi's long tirade about how she wouldn't fit into high society. Maybe you'll even make some connections and get a better job offer. It's a shame, though, that you're going without Bradley. I did invite him, but he's swamped with work, you know, Lexi replied. Selena nodded. Yes, I know. I talked to him, but he doesn't want to hear anything. Some cases, evidence, interrogations, just more paperwork. He's doing great, but it can't go on like this. You see, he just wants to be successful. And there are many who aspire to that. Lexi sighed. And besides, you know he's doing this for us, for the family. On Saturday, at 7 o'clock, a taxi dropped off Lexi at the restaurant. She was nervous, constantly adjusting her makeup, wiping off unsuitable lipstick 3 times, settling on the 4th, the most subdued shade. Bright makeup wasn't necessary for her. She was a lawyer, not some party girl. Maybe her skirt was too short. And those gloves? No, they were definitely unnecessary. Lexi took off the gloves and tucked them into her purse. Then she realized she hadn't had time for a manicure and put the gloves back on. Her hands started sweating. Oh, Lord. She should have just stayed home. Why did she even come here? Lexi got out of the car and decided to have a smoke. She rarely smoked, only when she was extremely nervous. Bradley always scolded her for this bad habit. He said it smelled terrible and made her impossible to kiss. But she couldn't help it. This was how she dealt with anxiety. Or maybe she should call a taxi and go back home before it was too late. Lexi. She heard a familiar voice. Approaching her was Layla. As always, she had chosen a business suit pants, a jacket, and a blouse. Only this time, the suit was dark burgundy, and the blouse was lace with a bow at the neck. Layla looked stunning. Lexi felt embarrassed about her simple dress. Next to Layla was a man around 50. Unremarkable, but Lexi, out of habit, noted distinctive features. A mole under his right eye, a noticeable protruding chin, deep wrinkles around the mouth, making the man resemble a puppet. A prominent forehead. This person could have played a scientist in a movie. For example, "This is the same Lexi who helped me sort out my now ex-husband," Layla said. "She's a wonderful lawyer. I recommend her." "Lexi, this is Matthew Lee, you could say, my colleague." Matthew silently watched Lexi. He didn't reach out his hand or nod at her. It made her uncomfortable under his penetrating, scrutinizing gaze. Maybe something was wrong with her. Or perhaps he thought someone like Lexi didn't belong in the company of people who could host parties in such restaurants. He didn't even seem to blink. Then, as if shaking off some obsession, he smiled. The smile seemed forced and insincere. "Hello, Lexi. Layla has told me a lot about you," he said. "Good evening." Lexi awkwardly shifted from one foot to the other. "Nice to meet you. Let's go. Everyone is already gathering." Layla took Lexi by the arm. "Relax. For heaven's sake. Everything's fine. Matthew's probably just not in the mood." Lexi wanted to go home even more. But she could endure it. She would stay in the restaurant for an hour at least. She would try dishes she might never see again in her life. "I wonder if they serve oysters there." Lexi terribly wanted to try oysters. Half an hour later, Lexi didn't want to leave anymore. She was seated at a table with a charming woman named Rowena, the owner of a veterinary clinic. Rowena talked about her work, expressing her love for animals and feeling like a veterinarian by calling. However, Matthew, who practically remained silent the whole time, was also at the table, sipping champagne. Sometimes Lexi caught his strange, scrutinizing gaze, but it quickly stopped bothering her. Maybe he was always like that, and it had nothing to do with her. Finally, the oysters were served. Lexi was puzzled. She realized she simply didn't know how to eat them. She looked at the plate and the utensils lying next to it. Should she use this fork? Or did she need a knife? Fortunately, Rowena came to the rescue. "Don't know how," she chuckled. "I was clueless the first time I tried them too. Took me about 5 minutes to figure out what to do. Look, just take a little lemon juice like this, and into your mouth." Lexi tried it and grimaced. Oysters disappointed her. They had a strange salty taste, nothing special. And why did everyone consider them a delicacy? "Don't frequent places like this often?" Matthew suddenly asked, startled. Lexi almost choked. Yes, it's my first time. She smiled. I see. Matthew looked pensive as he gazed at Lexi. She couldn't bait and looked away. What was wrong with him? Why was he scrutinizing her all evening, as if studying, trying to memorize every tiny feature of her face? And there was no romantic interest in his gaze. It was like an entomologist looking at a rare exotic beetle. How long have you been practicing law? He asked. For a while. Lexi nodded. But there was a break. Maternity leave. My son is almost a year old. Ah, so you're married, he said. Lexi frowned. He was strange. And why was she seated with this particular person? Yes, I'm married, Lexi replied. Matthew shrugged. To Lexi's immense surprise, a few minutes later, Matthew invited her to dance. She decided to agree. Why not? She wanted to dance, no matter with whom. Of course, she would prefer Bradley. But if there was no choice, Matthew would do. He danced well. He led her confidently, gently squeezing her hand. His face was strange, absent, as if he were looking through her and seeing someone else. But it didn't bother Lexi at all. Tonight she was Cinderella at this ball, and everything else was trivial. You dance well, he remarked. We used to dance a lot with my husband. Just like that, in the evenings, Lexi admitted. We used to. He inquired. Yes, now it's the child. Work. Lexi smiled. All this adult life, but you're still very young, the man said. What do you know about adult life? Suddenly she felt sorry for him. For some reason, his face saddened, as if Matthew were thinking about something he didn't want to think about, and couldn't get these thoughts out of his head. Lexi had experienced such moments long ago, when Archie was just born. She held him in her arms, admired her son, and then suddenly remembered the diagnosis, and the joy disappeared instantly, as if it had never been there at all. And in its place came sadness. Lexi didn't know what her expression was like in those moments, but it must have been the same as Matthew's now. They returned to the table. The man seemed to relax a bit. He even smiled sincerely and spoke more lively. He talked about his trading business. I started from a stall in the market. The man reminisced. I used to go and buy the goods myself. I traded myself. I trusted no one. It seemed like only I knew what to do. It was hard to learn to delegate responsibility to someone else. Now I have my own little network. Orchid. Perhaps you've heard of it. I know. Lexi laughed. I often go there. I even have discount cards. Well, then you know. He smiled. I rarely interact with customers. Usually, people in my circle prefer more expensive places. Lexi felt uncomfortable. Thanks. He reminded her of her status. But the disappointment quickly disappeared. She chatted with Rowena, listened to live music, and felt like she had stepped into a fairy tale. And at 9, she remembered. Lexi promised Selena she'd be home no later than 10. She needed to bathe Archie, and Selena wouldn't cope with it alone. For some reason, she's afraid of accidentally drowning the baby. It's time for me, Lexi confessed, getting up. Thank you for the pleasant company. All the best to you. Rowena smiled. Keep my business card. If you ever need my clinic, mention my name. They'll give you a discount. Thank you. But I don't have pets. Lexi laughed. Well, you never know. Rowena replied. Rowena stood up and hugged Lexi, enveloping her in a wave of warm floral scent. I'll be glad to see you again. And if anything, I'll turn to you. If my husband decides to divorce me, for example. Thank you, Lexi, and I'll work you out, suddenly announced Matthew, getting up from his chair. Lexi looked at him in surprise, then nodded briefly. Okay, thanks. She said goodbye to Layla, thanking her for the wonderful evening. And she left the restaurant with Matthew. I'm not a big fan of these places, he suddenly remarked. Well, I enjoyed it, Lexi said, enjoying the cool evening air. I wouldn't have come here if it weren't for Layla. She said you're a good lawyer, He turned to Lexi and looked her in the eyes. "And I happen to need a lawyer." "Oh, could I know the details?" Lexi asked. For some reason, she didn't want to work with Matthew. But if she became his lawyer, it would be another huge plus in her professional comma. And the money. She had recently read about some innovative method of working with children with Down syndrome. It should start at 1.5 years old, promising excellent results. But the price, details. It's all quite mundane. He smirked. "There's a conflict with my second wife. Long since ex, of course. She suddenly decided that I didn't give her enough. We divorced 7 years ago, and she still can't get over the fact that I left her." Matthew's eyes gleamed unkindly. His mouth twisted slightly. Lexi felt uneasy. It seemed he still hated his second wife. "But wait, the question should be closed," Lexi remarked. "So many years have passed. She decided that I was hiding income from her. She demands a huge sum and moral compensation. And I want to prove that she's wrong." "Well, first, I need to study the materials," Lexi said. "Write down my email address. Don't you have a business card?" He raised an eyebrow. "Well, honestly, no," Lexi admitted. "I haven't made them yet." "That's not good," Matthew calmly noted. "If I were you, I'd take care of that." "Okay, write down the address." He handed her his phone. Lexi entered her phone number and email address into the address book. "Lexi, I'll send you the materials," the man promised. "And I'll arrange for a taxi for you. Just tell me the address." Lexi wanted to object, but his tone allowed no objections. It was clear right away. Matthew is the boss. He doesn't tolerate anyone arguing with him. His subordinates probably have a tough time. Deep down, she was glad he would pay for the taxi. Lexi was already broke from the haircut and the new dress. Matthew called a car. As a farewell, he suddenly kissed her hand, holding her palm in his slightly longer than necessary. At home, Lexi apologized to the annoyed Selena for her prolonged absence. But Selena couldn't stay angry for long. "Let's go bathe, Archie," she sighed, watching Lexi take off her dress. "So, what happened, Lexi? Did you meet someone?" "No. Are you trying to marry me off?" Lexi laughed. "No, of course not." Selena smiled. "Well, I mean, did you meet anyone important? Established any connections?" "No. I just sat at a table with a nice veterinarian woman and the owner of a cosmetic store. By the way, maybe he'll become my future client," Lexi boasted. "Oh, my little one. Who do we have here with such a big smile?" The woman picked up her son and hugged Archie to herself, inhaling the scent of his crown with delight. Archie purred like a kitten, and Lexi blissfully smiled. He's such a good boy. If only she could give him what he deserves. It seems her fortune are turning around. Maybe everything will work out. I wonder how Bradley is doing. She needs to tell him that she ate real oysters today and drank champagne, a bottle of which costs as much as a month's salary for a high school teacher. Apparently, she drank it for the first and last time, but the fact itself amazed her. How can champagne cost so much? Do angels bring it from heaven? Together with Selena, they bathed Archie. Then Lexi put her son to bed. "You're glowing," Selena noticed, "because there will be a new case and a good new fee. We'll be able to go to that clinic with Archie. I'll send you there if you don't mind. You'll have to spend a month in Chicago." "Well, I'll go," Selena nodded. "And why aren't you going?" "You see, I have to work." Lexi frowned. "I'm fantasizing. And there's no fee yet. I just want everything to work out." They talked a little more. Lexi made plans for Archie's treatment, while Selena looked at her with a smile and nodded. She's probably happy that there's a prospect of going to Chicago ahead. Selena loved Chicago. She used to go there when she was a student and often talked about it. Lexi hoped the trip would also be a kind of gratitude for Selena helping her with her son. After taking a shower, Lexi realized she didn't want to sleep. She was terribly excited about tonight. The music, delicious food, women in beautiful dresses. Plus, a new business opportunity. If she brings in such a client, her boss will be singing her praises. Lexi desperately wanted to share the news with Bradley in person, just to see her husband's face. Let him know what his wife is capable of. Lexi quickly dried her hair and stepped out of the shower. Selena was sitting in the living room, watching a series. "I want to go see Bradley," Lexi said. "To tell him everything. I won't be able to sleep now anyway. And I don't need to go to work tomorrow." "Oh, you can't sit still." Selena winked slyly. "Just don't stay too long, or call if your talk with him drags on." "I just want to talk." Lexi blushed. The hint from her mother-in-law was clear. What to hide? She had similar plans. It's terrifying to think how much time she and Bradley haven't been intimate. But today it will all work out. He simply won't be able to refuse her. Lexi quickly got dressed and rushed out of the house. He'll be surprised when he sees her at the door. He probably won't believe she found a new client right away. Maybe she can even persuade him to come back home. Why waste money on a rental apartment? And Archie has been behaving calmly lately, and Selena could stay to help them. 10 minutes later, Lexi stood at the entrance. An unpleasant thought crossed her mind. Only 10 minutes. He rarely comes over. But she quickly dismissed the thought. Her husband works so much. Of course, Bradley doesn't always have time to stop by. He probably doesn't always have time to eat and take a shower. Why is she so worried? Lexi went up to the 5th floor and opened the door with her key. The apartment was quiet. Bradley must have already gone to bed. She kicked off her sneakers, fixed her hair in front of the mirror. She looked decent. She shouldn't have washed off her makeup. Her appearance would have been even more striking. Lexi peeked into the room. Bradley must be asleep already. She approached the bed, stroked his head. "Hey." He grumbled something discontentedly, and then rolled over to the other side. And Lexi noticed that her husband wasn't alone in bed. Without understanding what she was doing, the woman abruptly pulled back the blanket. Next to Bradley lay a woman dressed in a long silk nightgown. Bradley sat up and shook his head. The woman tried to pull the blanket back. "Bradley, who's this?" The woman also sat up, and Lexi recognized her. It was Zoe, her best friend. Unbelievable. Just recently, Zoe assured Lexi that a man like Bradley should be appreciated, or he'll leave. So, it turns out Zoe knew what she was talking about. "What are you doing here?" Bradley asked. His voice was calm, as if nothing special was happening. So what if she caught her husband in bed with someone else? Who hasn't been in such a situation? "What is she doing here?" Lexi hissed. Zoe looked at her friend perplexedly. Her face stretched out, her eyes expressing nothing in particular, as if her brain couldn't decide on the appropriate emotion. "Lexi, we need to talk." Bradley took her hand. It felt like an electric shock to her. "About what?" Lexi asked. "Zoe, could you leave us alone?" Bradley requested. She quickly nodded and disappeared behind the door. Lexi watched her go as if everything was normal, as if it were just an ordinary situation. Bradley was calm. She wasn't smashing dishes either, just sitting there, waiting for explanations. It was a strange situation. Zoe left quickly. Lexi heard the front door slam shut. Her friend was gone. Bradley had just been sitting there the whole time, examining the patterns on the wallpaper. "I've wanted to talk for a long time, but I couldn't muster up the courage," her husband finally said. "To talk about you finding another woman." "Bradley, it's simple. You come and say, 'I've found another woman.'" Lexi retorted. "That's not it." He waved his hand irritably and frowned. "I wanted to talk about us." He continued. "Yeah, I'll give you a divorce. I understand everything. Even right now," she muttered. "Lexi, please listen first." He raised his voice slightly. "I understand how you feel, but I don't think you do." She interrupted. "Maybe I don't, but sooner or later, this conversation had to happen. It's hard for me, and you think it's easy for me," Lexi protested. I work, take care of our child, do everything alone. No, not alone. Thanks to your mother, of course, but just listen to me. He lightly squeezed her shoulder, and Lexi immediately fell silent. I don't want a divorce. I love you, our son. But I've realized something. I want to open up our marriage, to open it up. What do you mean, Bradley? The woman asked in surprise. Lexi, people can love each other, but sometimes they lack new sensations. Even if they want to keep the marriage and love their partner, you understand? I lack those feelings. I work a lot. My life is nothing but stress. And Archie on top of that. It was hard for me to accept the fact that, well, that he's like that. Lexi took a nervous breath. Why does mention of Archie's condition hit her like a blow? She thought she had long come to terms with it. But her husband kept going. I love you. You're my wife, the mother of my son. But I don't want to deprive myself of encounters with other women, he said. Lexi felt like she misheard him. So, what do you mean, honey? Explain. You're going to sleep with them, huh? Go on dates. Is that it? She asked. And that too. But you have the same rights as me. As long as things are as they are. I want to live with Zoe, you understand? And then we'll see how it goes. And you're free to try to find someone too, he explained. Bradley, are you serious right now? Have you lost your mind? Are you joking? I don't understand. Lexi feeling a sudden headache. Lexi, it's better for both of us this way. If one of us finds someone who suits them better, there's nothing we can do about it. We'll get divorced. I'll always take care of you and Archie, he continued. This is nonsense, she protested. Lexi, listen, besides you, I haven't been with anyone since freshman year. He frowned. And you know, it's somehow wrong. Why did others have girlfriends before marriage? And I only had you. Life is short, Lexi. I want to be honest with you because I love and respect you. Yes, it's my need at the moment. You can accept it. Or we can divorce. But I don't want to lose you, honestly. I love you. And I love our son. But I need a little more freedom. Divorce. Just hearing that word hurt Lexi. There's no one closer to her than Bradley, except Archie. She simply can't lose him. If they divorce, her life will become meaningless. There won't be any more dreams of a home, of children, of a fluffy, mischievous cat and a kind, furry dog. Does Bradley really want to spend time with other women so badly? Is he willing to cause her such pain for it? I suggest you think about it, Bradley said. I knew it wouldn't be easy for you. It's not for me either. But this way is better. You're a smart woman. I think you'll agree that honesty is the most important thing. I'm honest with you, so the next step is up to you. Okay. I understand. Lexi slowly got up from the bed. I'll go home now, I guess. Okay. Just remember, I love you. And only you. Want me to work you? Bradley offered. No, thanks. Lexi politely declined. I'll manage on my own. Don't worry. Focus on your things here. Wait. Why did you come here? He asked. It doesn't matter anymore. Lexi couldn't remember how she made it home. It seemed like she bought a pack of cigarettes and smoked one. The nicotine made her head spin, but Lexi oddly found it comforting. The smoke seemed to push out all the unnecessary thoughts from her mind. He wants other women, but he loves her. What should she do? What is even the right thing to do in such a situation? She can't lose him. She just can't. Bradley is her man, her first and only love. When Lexi returned, Selena was still watching TV. You're home early, she said as Lexi entered the living room. Lexi silently nodded and collapsed on the couch. What happened? Her mother-in-law asked, concerned. Is everything okay with Bradley? No, everything's fine. Lexi lied. I see how fine everything is, Selena said, sitting next to Lexi and putting her arm around her shoulders. Tell me, I'm worried. Yeah, we had a little argument. Happens. Everything's fine. I'm going to bed. Lexi went to her room, stood for a while by her son's crib. He's so adorable. And you wouldn't say he's sick, that he's not like everyone else. Love pierced Lexi's heart like a blade. Tears stung her eyes. She had to agree to Bradley's terms. She couldn't deprive Archie of his father. But she didn't want to. She wanted to bury her face in the pillow and cry until morning. Lexi decided to distract herself. Turned on the bedside lamp. Opened her laptop. A new email had arrived. From Matthew Lee. Oh, she almost forgot about him. The email was short. I'll hire you if you agree to my conditions. First, you'll only work on my case. Second, you'll live in my house. Lexi was stunned. What did that mean? Why would a lawyer want to live with his client? Is he crazy? Or just so controlling? Or maybe he intends to check every 5 minutes if she's actually working in the room he assigns her, and penalize her if he finds out she's playing solitaire. For example, several documents were attached to the email. A court decision, a divorce certificate. Lexi reviewed the documents and concluded that there was nothing too complicated about the case. The hurt woman decided to get back at her ex-husband after many years. Her goal wasn't to get rich, but simply to annoy her husband, her ex-husband. But the fee Matthew offered Lexi was tempting, very tempting. Yet, she couldn't just go live with him. She pondered. Still, the fee was enticing. It would be just enough to send Archie to that hospital. But living with Matthew under one roof, what if he decides to harm her and bury her in the forest at night? She doesn't really know him. Then Bradley would be free. You have to find positives in everything. Lexi shut down her laptop, curled up under the covers, and fell asleep, not even having a chance to think about her conversation with Bradley. Her morning began with a phone call. It was Zoe. She didn't want to pick up the phone from her now former friend. But Zoe kept calling, and Lexi eventually answered. Hello, Lexi. Hi. Zoe. Are you trying to tell me now that it's not what I think? No. It is what you think. Lexi, it's not easy for me either. I've been lonely for so long. We met on the street, started talking. Yeah, you talked, and ended up in his bed. Lexi suddenly chuckled. Zoe, what do you want from me now? Forgiveness and understanding? No, it's just Lexi. He was feeling down. You're far away. The child, you know. The child, you understand. Not like everyone else. I'm alone. It's been a long time since I had anyone. And you're Bradley. What do you want? Exclaimed Lexi. What do you need from me right now? Blessings. Is that it? Please, just go to him. No, it's just Bradley suggested. How can I put it? Just say it as it is. You won't surprise me anymore, Zoe. Well, basically, he suggested moving in with him for a while. I agreed. Oh, I see. Well, congratulations. Lexi closed her eyes. Just don't cry. Just don't scream from the pain. Lexi, I don't need congratulations. Just understand, it's hard for him too. And it's hard for me, easy for me. Lexi laughed, her laughter tinged with hysteria. Go ahead and move in. Congratulations, it's your fault. Suddenly exclaimed Zoe. I always thought you didn't appreciate what you had. You blamed him for not spending enough time with you. Blamed him for not giving enough money. Lexi suddenly realized she didn't want to listen to her friend anymore and hung up. Then she closed her eyes, holding her breath. Archie whimpered in his crib. I'm coming, honey, she whispered in a hoarse, strange voice. After breakfast, Lexi called Matthew. Do you accept my offer? He asked instead of greeting. I'll pay the money up front, regardless of the case's outcome. If the result is satisfactory, you'll also receive a bonus. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to say that she couldn't move in with Matthew. After all, she had a little child. But then she suddenly thought about Bradley. About how calmly he spoke about infidelity. About Zoe, who blamed Lexi for Bradley feeling too lonely. He, by the way, decided to move out himself. But now it seemed like everyone forgot about it, as if she had kicked him out. I agree, said Lexi. When can I start? Come on Monday. I'll give you time to sort out your affairs. Tuesday, Lexi requested. I can't make it sooner. All right. I'll send a car for you, he replied. Did she imagine it? Or did his voice sound relieved? The man hung up without saying goodbye. Guess people like him aren't used to wasting time on formalities. The phone rang. A message came through. A large sum was credited to Lexi's account. Apparently, if life takes away in one place, it immediately adds somewhere else. Over breakfast, Lexi told Selena that she and Archie were going to Chicago. What are you talking about? How can you afford it? Exclaimed her mother-in-law. I have the money, Selena. I got a good fee. Just enough. I'll settle everything on Monday, Lexi replied. Are you really not going? I have a job. The woman sighed. Lexi felt like crying. She had never been apart from her son for so long. Would she endure the separation? But there were no other options. Oh, you and Bradley are always working. Selena sighed. You see, it's for Archie's benefit. Lexi shrugged. I don't want to be away from my son either. Maybe we'll all go together in a year. Lexi bit her lip. If Selena wanted to continue the conversation, Lexi would simply not hold back and burst into tears. Sorry, I need to get ready. I'm going on a business trip on Tuesday. I'll write to the clinic to arrange your admission. Sunday flew by quickly. Lexi packed her things, studied the case materials once again, then played with her son. How quickly he was growing up. What a pity to miss this wonderful time. But there was no choice. They needed the money, and Lexi would do everything to get it, for the sake of her son. And it didn't matter whether Bradley would help her or not. Bradley. The thought of her husband pierced Lexi's heart with pain. She didn't want to think about him. She had a main task, to get the money that would go towards her son's treatment, towards his development. On Monday, Lexi went to work, explained to her boss that she had received a new case, which she would handle through the agency. The boss was surprised to learn the client's name. He wished her luck and advised her to come to him if she needed help. Then Lexi returned home and helped Selena pack, and in the evening, she didn't leave her son's side. Lexi felt like a traitor. Perhaps Archie deserved a better, more devoted mother, but there was nothing to be done. Throughout the night, the woman cried into her pillow, and in the morning, she saw Selena off at the airport, returned home, and called Matthew. Hello. I'm ready to leave. Hello. Wait. The car will be there in an hour. And an hour later, Lexi walked out of the house with a suitcase in her hand. Indeed, a black Jeep was already waiting for her. The driver rolled down the window and waved cheerfully. I'm here for you. Lexi shyly smiled in response. I need help. He helped her put the suitcase in the trunk. Lexi liked the driver. He looked about 50, quite good-natured. I'm Tony. He introduced himself. Haven't driven such beautiful young women in a while. Thank you, blushed Lexi. Have you been working for Matthew for long? Quite a while. Tony chuckled. About 10 years. We studied together in college, then went our separate ways, and met again 10 years ago, just after his wife died. He offered me a job, really helped me out, you know. I was in a bad place back then. Wife left me for someone else. I started drinking, and Matthew pulled me out of that hole and provided me with work. I see. He seems like a good person. The lawyer ventured timidly. Well, yeah, not bad. Changed a lot. Used to be different, though, more cheerful. But I won't gossip with you. Matthew wouldn't like it, but it seemed like Tony really wanted to gossip. So, by the end of the trip, Lexi knew a lot about Matthew. The man graduated from the chemistry faculty, was considered one of the best students in his class, engaged in scientific research, spoke at conferences, and aspired to enter graduate school. Tony and Matthew were close friends, despite having different interests. Tony barely graduated, but he was allowed to stay because he was excellent at volleyball and represented the team at competitions, serving as the team captain. Tony struggled in college, and if it weren't for Matthew's help, Tony probably wouldn't have gotten his diploma. After college, Tony joined the army, served in the North, and there he met his future wife. At first, he kept in touch with Matthew, but their communication gradually faded away, as often happens, and after 10 years, Tony and his wife returned to their hometown, missing the places of their childhood. Their relationship gradually deteriorated. Tony worked as a security guard, which didn't satisfy his wife. She wanted him to bring in more money, but he couldn't manage it. Their son grew up and left, went to university. The house became empty. Conflicts arose more and more often. In the end, Tony's wife left him, saying she had another man. Tony started drinking. A lot. He suffered from loneliness, missed his son and wife, felt like his life had been wasted. One fine day, on his way back from work, he met Matthew. Or rather, Matthew noticed him from the car window. He suggested sitting down in a restaurant, having a chat. Tony agreed back then. Matthew talked about his success at a chain of stores, with plans to start manufacturing their own cosmetics to be sold in those stores. In Matthew's presence, Tony felt like a complete failure. Initially reluctant to confess that he was just a security guard, a couple of shots of vodka loosened his tongue. Matthew listened to his friend's confession in silence. Then he said, "Would you like to work for me? You got a driver's license?" "Of course," Tony replied. "Great. I'll pay well," Matthew promised. "Just one condition. No more alcohol." Tony thought for a moment and agreed. That's how he became Matthew's personal driver. During long trips, they often chatted about life. It was during these conversations that Tony learned that Matthew had been married 3 times. He met his first wife while studying in graduate school. She was finishing her degree in philology and also wanted to pursue a career in academia. She was a dreamy, spiritual girl. The marriage lasted 3 years and ended in divorce. Along with her dreaminess and spirituality came a rather hysterical temperament. She was jealous of Matthew to the point of absurdity, threatening to kill herself if he so much as spoke to other women, even platonically. She would drive to his workplace to check if he was being unfaithful. Matthew couldn't handle such a life. He feared that his ex-wife might actually harm herself. But fortunately, that never happened. She quickly remarried, this time to a young actor from the local theater. Through mutual acquaintances, Matthew learned that they argued every day but had no plans to divorce. Apparently, they both wanted to live life on the edge and found each other. The second wife, Diane, came into Matthew's life after he had opened his first store, or rather, a stall at the market. Diane dreamed of a lavish lifestyle. Perhaps it was thanks to her that Matthew achieved success. Diane wanted money. Lots of money. She wanted them to travel regularly, buy expensive clothes and jewelry. Then Matthew realized that she was occasionally withdrawing money from accounts intended for the development of his business. He could forgive Diane's love of luxury, but he couldn't forgive theft. The divorce was tough. In court, Diane claimed she was pregnant with Matthew's child. He took the news calmly and stated that he would demand a paternity test after the child was born. If paternity was confirmed, Diane would get whatever she wanted. However, it turned out there was no pregnancy, and Diane, feeling humiliated and offended, was left with nothing. Then there was Alice, Matthew's main love. The most passionate, the most fatal in his life. They met by chance. She applied for a job with them. Tony recounted. He immediately liked her. He says it was like lightning struck him when he saw her. After the interview, they went to a restaurant. 2 months later, they were married. Really? Well, Lexi exclaimed, surprised. You wouldn't think he could make such a decision so quickly. People like him usually take their time. Assess the person first. Yeah, but something happened to him here. Tony shrugged. She enchanted him somehow. But there was no happiness in the marriage. She drank, partied, even brought other men home right in front of him. And he kept forgiving her. That's the kind of love he had for her. Blind. Tell me, as a woman, what do you do to drive men crazy like that? I don't know. Lexi smiled. I'm a lawyer, not a seductress. And I've never driven anyone crazy. If I brought someone home, my husband certainly wouldn't forgive me. Lexi suddenly realized she had lied. Bradley practically allowed her to cheat officially. But she didn't want to. And him. Bradley had a different point of view. Anyway, Alice lived with him for 5 years. The man continued. He said he lost weight then, promised himself after each of her affairs that he would kick her out. But he couldn't. He did everything for her. Poor Matthew fulfilled all her desires. And her. I don't know. I listened to him, even thought there might have been something wrong with Alice's head. But no normal woman behaves like that. Tony fell silent. And did they get divorced later? No, they didn't. Tony sighed. She died. They argued. She got drunk. Got behind the wheel in that state. He had already gone to bed. She drove off and crashed. He didn't leave her bedside for weeks. Hired the best doctors. Spent a fortune, hoping to save her. But there was no chance. So now Matthew is alone and living. I think after Alice, he's hardly likely to want to marry again. Well, Lexi shuddered. What a nightmare. Yeah. You know, Lexi, guilt and love, worse than diseases. I think. You can't forgive everything. You can. If you love, you can. She retorted. Love is forgiveness. Forgiving flaws, heated words, and so on. Ah, well, you're still young. It seems. Tony smiled. No one's hurt you badly yet. Well, I hope it stays that way. Lexi wanted to say that she had been hurt and badly. But she didn't. Oh, and here's Matthew's house. The driver said. We've arrived. They pulled up to a small cottage. Just 1 floor. Lexi thought Matthew lived in a luxurious palace. Tony seemed to overhear her thoughts. He used to live somewhere else, built a 3-story house. But then he sold everything and moved here. He lived with Alice in that house. Says the memories were heavy. That's why he moved. But this house is charming too, Lexi said sincerely. The house indeed appealed to the woman. She herself would love to live in such a place. White brick walls, red tiles, and a weather vane in the shape of an angel. For some reason, the weather vane particularly charmed her. How sweet and whimsical of Matthew to choose such a thing. Lexi must have started feeling sorry for the man upon learning the story of his life. Tony helped the guest take her suitcase out of the trunk. Together they walked to the house through the neglected garden. Why wasn't anyone taking care of the garden? Weeds, bushes overgrown, apple trees bent to the ground under the weight of ripe fruit. Lexi felt uneasy. Maybe Matthew really was crazy. She expected a housekeeper to open the door for them. But the owner himself appeared on the threshold. Good day. He nodded. There was not a hint of a smile on his face. Thanks, Tony. You're free until 6. We'll head to the main office at 6. Don't forget, he instructed. Understood. Got it, Tony said. I'll be waiting promptly at 6. Lexi realized she was very scared. It wasn't too late to change her mind and leave. But the money. It was already paid. And Archie and Grandma are already in Chicago. Selena wrote to Lexi that they had already landed and were heading to the rehabilitation center by taxi. Well, come in. Matthew stepped back, letting Lexi inside. Everything's ready in your room. Lexi became curious. Did he clean her room himself or not? Thank you. I've studied what you sent me. Is there anything else I should know? Yes, I've prepared everything. You'll see the materials on the table in your room. He fell silent, looking at her. Again, that strange, heavy gaze. Lexi nervously swallowed. Should I start working then? Oh, by the way, I suggest you join me for lunch. 3 o'clock in the living room. I've ordered food. Hope you like European cuisine. I promise there won't be any oysters." He remembered that Lexi didn't know how to eat oysters. "Thank you. I'd love to." The homeowner escorted her to the room. Lexi thanked him, trying not to pay attention to that strange look. What's wrong with him? Or does he look at everyone like that? Maybe it's the heavy, thick eyebrows. Although the main thing is that he pays the money, and the rest doesn't matter. The room was small. A bed, a shower, a desk with folders of documents on it. It was quite enough for her. Lexi called Selena, made sure her son was okay. She decided she was a bad mother, shed a few tears. Then she took a shower, calmed down, changed clothes, read the materials left by Matthew. Bank accounts, even receipts for expensive gifts. Unbelievable. Matthew seemed to spoil his wife. iPhones, jewelry, shoes that cost as much as Lexi earns in a year. The woman felt offended. Bradley almost never gave her such gifts. He said their budget was shared, so she could just buy whatever she wanted. Lunchtime was approaching. Lexi put on jeans and a white t-shirt, tied her hair back, and headed to the living room. She was terribly hungry. Funny, she felt like a fairy tale princess. A princess who found herself in a beast's castle, which could perhaps turn into a handsome prince. This thought amused Lexi, but it seemed terribly silly. The castle was too modest, and a prince out of Matthew was unlikely to happen. He seemed kind of unpleasant at first glance. Oh well. The main thing was that this prince paid enough for the beauty to send her son for treatment. He was already waiting for her at the table. 3 kinds of pizza, some salads, pasta with seafood. Lexi's stomach growled. Matthew must have heard it. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "Yes, a little," she admitted. "You'll eat with me," the homeowner ordered. "Sit down." Lexi sat down on the edge of the chair. She pulled the plate of pasta towards herself and eagerly started eating. When only pleasant memories of the pasta remained, she looked up at Matthew. The homeowner still looked at her as if trying to read her mind. "Thank you." The lawyer smiled. "It was very delicious." "Do you always dress like this?" the man suddenly asked. Lexi frowned. "Well, almost." "Why? Should I dress differently?" "In a few days, I'm meeting with some partners. Will you accompany me?" "Listen, I'm here as a lawyer." Lexi pushed her plate away and crossed her arms over her chest. "Maybe I don't understand something. Why would I need to be at this meeting?" "You misunderstood me," he replied in a low voice. "You're a lawyer. Perhaps you'll be useful to me as a lawyer. Of course, I'll pay you for these services." Lexi pondered. What was she afraid of? She wasn't such a delicacy for men to go crazy over. Just ordinary, slightly chubby face. Nothing remarkable. Of course, Lexi knew how to dress nicely and highlight her best features, like plump lips. But she had a big nose. And Matthew, a man who seemed capable of getting any woman he wanted, probably didn't suddenly fall in love with her. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's just a bit strange for me." "I understand," he shrugged. "I hope you'll agree. Your help could be invaluable." "Can I go to my room?" she asked. "Yes, of course," Matthew nodded. "And don't wait for me tonight, Lexi. I'll be back late." "Don't worry. The village is guarded. The house is alarmed. You'll be able to leave, but if you decide to come back, it'll trigger." Lexi thought it was reasonable not to leave the house. She didn't want to wait for Matthew on the lawn. It felt rather gloomy in his garden. It evoked sad thoughts. I wonder why he doesn't try to solve this problem. He simply needed to hire a gardener. He had the money for it. And the cottage wasn't the coziest place either. It felt somewhat uncomfortable. There were no cute details that spoke of the owner's character. It's as if it wasn't a home, but a hotel. But why was it her concern? After lunch, Lexi drafted a defense plan. She called her mother-in-law, who had already checked into the hotel, and listened to her son, to whom Selena passed the phone. She cried again. Lexi desperately wanted to be next to Archie. And with her husband, Bradley. I wonder, how is Bradley doing? Has Zoe moved in with him already? Maybe right now they're cuddling in bed or indulging in passionate love. Thinking about it was unbearable for Lexi. Oh well, everything will work out somehow. Bradley might indeed need a change of scenery. And then she'll forgive him. And they'll live even better than before. Silly thoughts and memories crept into her mind. For some reason, Lexi remembered how Bradley once forgot case materials at home, and Lexi rushed to court to give them to him. Or how they went for a walk on the embankment together, and Lexi spilled soda on her new dress. Then Bradley called her his sweet woman. How they went camping in the woods and accidentally forgot matches and a lighter, and froze in the tent, and then both got tonsillitis. But all of this was before the birth of their son, Archie. And then everything seemed to change, as if a chasm appeared between Lexi and Bradley, which she didn't want to notice. Well, it'll pass with time, and they'll live as before. The next few days passed peacefully. Lexi worked, Matthew left in the morning, and returned home only in the evening. They had dinner together, and the rest of the time the kitchen was at Lexi's disposal. They went to a meeting with Matthew's partners together. Although there was one oddity, he insisted that she let her hair down and wore a black dress that he brought from somewhere. Lexi thought about it but agreed. Maybe they had a special dress code there, and Matthew just didn't want Lexi to embarrass herself. However, she still didn't understand the purpose of her presence at the meeting. They sat in a restaurant, then went to the office to sign documents. The documents were properly prepared, at least from a legal point of view. Maybe her employer just liked having a woman by his side. Yet, this Matthew was a mysterious person. Quite mysterious. Lexi met with Tony several times. It was easier to talk to the driver. They drank tea in the kitchen while Tony waited for Matthew. They chatted about the weather, politics, and sometimes sports. And she terribly missed her son. His classes were going according to schedule. Her mother-in-law said that all the specialists who worked with Archie, including Selena herself, really liked him. The woman said she talked to several moms who also worked with children at this center, and they were very satisfied with the results. Lexi desperately wanted to be in Selena's place. But money was needed. And for that, she needed to work. Winning a second consecutive case felt like a significant achievement for Lexi. It gave her the opportunity to establish a reputation as a lawyer who deals with serious matters, and she was doing so quite successfully. If she managed to keep it up, Archie would have everything he needed. One day, Lexi decided to make soup. However, she didn't have the necessary ingredients in the fridge, so she had to search for a local store, which wasn't nearby. Apparently, the residents of this village preferred to order food delivered straight to their homes. But Lexi actually enjoyed the work. The weather was excellent. The soup turned out great. Thick, flavorful, and aromatic. Lexi knew how to cook and loved it. Sometimes she even regretted not devoting herself to culinary arts. Bradley always praised his wife's dishes. He even made the ultimate compliment to her, saying that her cooking was better than his mother's. And now, Bradley must be feeding Zoe. I wonder, does Zoe's cooking turn out as good as Lexi's? For some reason, Matthew was amazed by the soup. Lexi didn't expect such a reaction. He even ate 2 plates and smiled quite sincerely, which surprised her. After dinner, Matthew asked her to sit with him for a while. Let's discuss how the case is progressing, he said. What do you think? To be honest, I don't see any problem. Lexi shrugged. It's all pretty straightforward. Your ex-wife just wants to get on your nerves, nothing more. Layla had a very similar case. We'll easily prove that your wife is wrong, ex-wife. Matthew grimaced. Fortunately, I've never been lucky with women. Well, it's never too late. Lexi smiled. No, I'm done with that. It seems I'm not cut out for married life. And what about you? As far as I know, you are married. Yes, Lexi replied. And I'm happy in my marriage. My husband and I have been together since university. Bradley is also a lawyer, but he handles criminal cases. Then why do you live separately? His gaze became penetrating again. Sorry, I need to know who I'm inviting into my home. You see, it just turned out that way, Matthew, Lexi said, flustered. The child interfered with his work, and I completely understand him myself. Our Archie cries a lot. He needs a lot of attention. It's hard to concentrate, but somehow you managed to concentrate. The homeowner noticed. Lexi couldn't find words to reply to him. She simply looked away and stared out the window, trying not to cry. What kind of person was he? He hit her sore spot right on target. I'm sorry, the employer said softly. I didn't mean to upset you, Lexi. As compensation, I suggest we go somewhere together tomorrow. I'm free, so I invite you to a restaurant. I've ordered a dress. It will be delivered in an hour. Choose something suitable. Matthew, the court is in 2 days. Lexi reminded him. It's okay. I know you'll handle it. You just need to relax. And this is my gift for your work. Agreed, Lexi. Agreed. She nodded. The fact that he ordered dresses for her slightly scared her. It seemed like some kind of exaggerated control. On the other hand, he was used to making all the decisions himself. Maybe Matthew just didn't understand why such an approach outside of work might unsettle someone. The dresses were delivered in an hour. All of them fit Lexi perfectly. He was attentive. You couldn't deny that. Maybe he sneaked into her room and studied her things. Lexi didn't want to think about it. However, the style of the dresses wasn't quite her. They were quite revealing, with deep necklines and bright colors. She looked at herself in the mirror and felt like the reflection wasn't her, but some confident girl whose main hobby was collecting men's hearts. There were 3 dresses in total: red, leopard print, and black. The first seemed too flashy. The second, funny and vulgar. Lexi settled on the third one. Yes, it was short and showed her legs, something Lexi wasn't used to. But at least it didn't have a deep neckline. She had to do a bold makeup to bring harmony to the look. Well, she had to take it as a ticket to another world. A world that was previously closed to her. Maybe in a year, Lexi would become a regular at fancy restaurants. Who knows? And Matthew was already waiting for her in the living room. Seeing Lexi, he was stunned. The man's eyes widened, his eyebrows rose, and even his mouth opened slightly. Is something wrong? I can change, she offered. No, everything's fine. He slowly got up and approached Lexi, never taking his eyes off her face. Wait. Matthew worked over to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a box. Jewelry is usually kept in such boxes. He silently took out a necklace from the box, a flower with white petals on a long gold chain. Matthew stood behind Lexi, who was speechless, and put the necklace around her neck. Then he stepped back, as if admiring his creation. It's beautiful. She touched the pendant with her finger. Whose is it? It doesn't matter. He frowned. I just want you to wear it. Shall we go? Let's go. Lexi nodded. Tony drove them to the restaurant, looking puzzled, glancing between Lexi and Matthew. He must have thought that Lexi decided to seduce his old friend, and how to explain to him that it's not at all what he thinks. But in the restaurant, Lexi understood. It was exactly what Tony had thought. Lexi, I would like to offer you something more than just business communication, Matthew said, sipping his wine, apparently for courage. She almost choked on the fish. I'm sorry. What do you mean? You're a beautiful woman. He smiled. I understand that you're married, but forgive me. I've concluded that your relationship with your husband isn't working out. So I'm offering myself to you, Matthew. But hold on. He nervously interrupted her. I know about your problems with your son. I can help solve them. You'll have money for his treatment. You can live with me for as long as you like. Well, how romantic. The woman muttered. That's how love confessions should sound. Well, Live with me as long as it suits you. And then, if anything, you can leave wherever you want. Understand, I'm not offering you marriage. Matthew smirked. That, as I understand it, is not for me. I've tried it several times, and I've had enough. But I want you to be with me. At least in some sense. In what sense? Lexi was surprised. What do you mean? Well, living together, doing some things that people in relationships do. You mean in bed? Yes. Why are you looking at me like that? It's like you have a child, and you understand where these children come from. Listen, isn't this kind of wild? Lexi frowned and pushed her plate away. You do realize you're practically buying me, don't you? No, I'm not buying you. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial partnership. But why me? Lexi asked. Forgive me, Matthew, but there are plenty of single women in the world. They're prettier than me. They're free. They don't have children. As for beauty, I would argue. He smiled, and the smile was almost genuine. I know there are no ugly women. There are women who either lack time or money. You clearly belong to the second category. As for freedom, I don't believe in the sanctity of marital bonds. Excuse me, do you realize that I could just get up and leave right now? Lexi said. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. The man sighed. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I decided to offer it to you. I'm not a young guy to court, give flowers, and take you to the movies, works in the parks. And you're not 15. I promise you'll be fine, Lexi. And I won't hurt you. I'll let you go whenever you want. Are these terms acceptable to you? Lexi felt like bursting into laughter. Here's the second man offering her a special relationship. And this is all in a matter of weeks. What's next? I can't accept your offer, she declared. I'll finish my work and leave. You have time to think about it. He indifferently took a sip of wine. I won't rush you, Lexi. Well, thanks for that, Matthew. Lexi felt her appetite disappear. Is he crazy? Essentially, Matthew wants to buy her. Amazing. Lexi isn't one of those women who receive such offers often. They didn't discuss the potential relationship any further that day. Instead, they took a stroll around the city. Matthew behaved almost normally. He told Lexi about his work, about how he's trying to launch his own cosmetics brand. He even seemed to rejuvenate a little while talking about his plans. It was evident that he was passionate about his work. This trait in people always attracted Lexi. They returned home almost at midnight. Lexi took a shower and lay down in bed. She called Selena. The news was bad. Lexi, Archie and I have caught a bad cold. The doctors say we can't continue the treatment, the woman said. So we're getting treated and coming back. Don't worry, they'll refund the money. Lexi closed her eyes to hold back the tears. Why does she seem to be such a failure? I'll finish my work soon and come back. Don't rush. Keep working. By the way, they praised Archie. Her mother-in-law said. They say he's a very smart boy. He's the best in the world. Lexi smiled. She desperately wanted to hug her son. She needed to come to the city and spend some time with him, or perhaps ask Matthew to allow him to move into his house. Although he's unlikely to agree. Why would he want a child here? On the other hand, if he sees Archie, maybe his desire for what he called special relationships with Lexi will disappear. The next morning, the court hearing was scheduled, but Diane, Matthew's ex-wife, didn't bother to come. She knows she's unlikely to win the case. She's just dragging out the time. Lexi expected this. The rest of the day, Lexi decided to dedicate to the garden. She didn't ask Matthew for permission. She needed physical exertion. Lexi cleaned up, gathered the apples that had fallen to the ground and were rotting in the grass. The garden started to look a little better, but it still needed care. In the evening, Bradley called her. Her husband said that he now lives with Zoe and doesn't know what to do next. Lexi, I can't be alone, he declared. You're also to blame. By the way, me. Blame for what? she exclaimed. "You decided to live separately yourself. I didn't force you, Bradley. You don't even understand what I'm talking about. You don't understand me," the man said dramatically. "Fine, I'll live with Zoe because I decided so." He hung up. Lexi shrugged, looking at the screen. What got into him? Does she have to come and rescue him from Zoe? Probably it wasn't easy for him to come to the conclusion that Lexi was to blame for what happened. But he managed somehow. Good lawyer. Especially for himself. Lexi felt deeply hurt. For herself. For her son. Even for Selena. Her mother-in-law thinks everything is fine between them and Bradley. And it turns out she has the right to a relationship. So why limit herself? That evening, Matthew lit the fireplace and asked Lexi to wear the red dress. She complied. She wanted to do something adventurous. Something that would make her believe in herself again and forget for a while about her husband and now ex-friend. They sat in armchairs and watched the fire. "Is something wrong with you?" Matthew asked. "You hardly ever smile." "Oh, just silly thoughts," she replied. She couldn't complain to him about her husband problems. He's probably having dinner with Zoe right now or sitting on the couch cuddling. She used to sit like that with Bradley, dreaming together about what their future would be like. But something didn't go according to plan. And now Lexi is in the house of some strange man, in a ridiculous red dress in which she feels like a different person. And this person is much bolder than Lexi herself. She glanced at Matthew's profile. Straight nose, low forehead, tight lips. I wonder how he kisses. It must be rough, with force. He's used to keeping everything under control. He felt her gaze and turned to Lexi. The man stared at her for a long time, and she stared back at him. The woman decided to act. She stood up, approached him, leaned on the arm of the chair, and put her hand on his shoulder. She had never behaved like this, not even with Bradley. He often said that Lexi was too timid, but now there was no trace of timidity. She leaned in and kissed Matthew. He responded to her kiss, softer than she thought. Oddly enough, her head spun. Then she pulled away from him and looked at him questioningly. She waited for his response. Not with words, maybe with a glance. "You're completely different," he suddenly said. "What?" "Nothing, Lexi. And I'm glad you agreed to my proposal." And he stared at the fire. Lexi felt uncomfortable. Did she do something wrong? Did she make a mistake? "I'm sorry," she said. Matthew smiled in response. "Tomorrow, Lexi, I invite you to the theater. I've already bought the tickets. And the day after tomorrow is the court hearing. It's all quite untimely. Amazingly, of course." "What are you talking about?" "It doesn't matter." He unexpectedly took her hand and brought it to his lips. "Just some disconnected thoughts. I'll go, I guess," she said. "It's time for me to sleep." "Okay, go." The man smiled. "Good night." And that's it. Lexi lay on the bed without taking off her dress. She spread her arms. Lord, what is she doing? So she's ready to cheat on Bradley. And with whom? With a person she has no feelings for. But he himself said she had the right to. Or is she really going crazy? She can't behave like this. She's a mother. She needs to think about her child, not seek adventures. But how she wanted to prove to Bradley that she's worth something. Did he really think Lexi would just sit and wait while her husband has fun? By the way, she also has the right to that, in his own words. Verdict: completely justified. Lexi fell asleep without changing. The next day, they went to the theater. Matthew, as it turned out, was an opera enthusiast. Then they visited a cafe and had a snack. He still looked at her strangely, but he began to smile, and Lexi liked this smile. Well, maybe such a relationship has every right to exist. And he didn't rush her, didn't hint at going to bed. They just spent time together, but kissed a couple of times in the car. But that's forgivable, especially when your husband sleeps with your friend. Lexi was in a great mood. True, until Zoe called. Lexi, hey, listen, I suggest you give in. She said, Bradley can't tell you and can't make up his mind what to give in. Lexi pretended not to understand the hints. What are you talking about, friend? I seem to have already given in. Give him a divorce, said Zoe. He wants to be with me, and I with him. He said you went to some rich guy and live with him in the same house. Why do you need this marriage? Give me a chance for happiness. Zoe, listen, I don't want to discuss this with you. Lexi hung up. The next day, the court hearing was scheduled. Matthew's ex-wife finally showed up, but Lexi achieved nothing. A second hearing was scheduled because Diane was dragging her feet, spouting nonsense, demanding witnesses from other cities. Disappointed, Lexi returned to Matthew's cottage feeling utterly insignificant. Perhaps she had overstepped trying to solve a task beyond her ability, and Matthew would demand that she return his fee. In her room, she found a box with a new expensive laptop and a note from Matthew. This is my gift to you. It'll help with your work. Lexi tried to return the gift, but the man refused to take the laptop back. I want it to be yours for work. It's peanuts to me, he said. The next week passed peacefully. Lexi worked a lot, worked around the area enjoying the last warm days, cooked dinners and breakfast for Matthew. It seemed he liked it. In the evenings, they sat by the fireplace, kissed, and for some reason, the man didn't insist on more. And if he did, Lexi didn't know how she would react. She would probably refuse. It would mean that her relationship with Bradley had changed forever. She just couldn't live with him peacefully. No matter what he said to her then, it was a taboo, and a woman couldn't break it. They say men are allowed more than women. Perhaps women themselves allow men to behave this way. A week later, Lexi called Bradley. Her husband was furious. What does this mean? Lexi, what are you talking about? The woman was surprised. At first, she thought he was watching her. Maybe he somehow found out how they were spending time with Matthew. Lexi, I thought you were a wonderful mother. Bradley yelled that your son is everything to you. And what's the result? What's the result? Bradley, stop speaking in riddles. My mom came to me and gave Archie to me. Said she had to leave urgently somewhere. And you're working and can't sit with the child. Lexi, what does this mean? The world had definitely gone completely and irreversibly mad. Oh, to return to the old calm and predictable life. I didn't ask Selena to do this, Bradley. I'll talk to her. The woman declared. You decided to get revenge, right? So he's going crazy. Oh, I'm so sorry for your Zoe, Lexi said sarcastically. It just breaks my heart to think about her. I see. You've gone to some man, dumped the kid on me, and you're enjoying life, said Bradley. I'm waiting for you. Come and pick up Archie. Lexi thought for a moment and called her mother-in-law. Selena, what does this mean? She asked. Why didn't you tell me? Listen, what am I supposed to tell you? The woman exclaimed. I come to see my son and meet some girl in a negligee, acting like the mistress. And Bradley is hiding his eyes like a guilty puppy. I ask, what's all this about, Sonny? And what did he say? Lexi chuckled. It seemed she was starting to understand her mother-in-law's line of thinking. He says, Mom, I'm a free modern person, can do whatever I want with my life. Selena continued. Well, and he looks so smug. Eck. So I gave him Archie. He's an adult. Let him handle it like an adult and take care of his own child. I have to go back, Lexi declared. They might not cope. They'll manage, Selena said spitefully. They won't vanish into thin air. If anything, I'm here. Let them live with the kid for a week. Let's see what they say. Zoe started to act full tender, rocking him in her arms. But her eyes, they're as vicious as hungry piranhas. It's a lesson they need. And don't you dare come over. Listen, I miss him terribly, horribly, Lexi admitted. Every night I dream of Archie. I'm begging you, hold on a little longer. My girl. Otherwise they won't learn anything. Lexi, why didn't you tell me anything? You knew everything. I knew everything. Lexi answered honestly. I just thought it was temporary and would pass quickly. Oh, Lexi, I've endured it too. Thought I needed to be wise. But I should have been firm, not wise. And I'm partly to blame for this. I spoiled Bradley. That's the result. Well, he'll learn. And Lexi decided her mother-in-law was right. No matter how much she missed Archie, Bradley needed to understand what he was doing. It seemed too easy for him, strolling around as if they had an open marriage, saying, "Go ahead, my dear wife. Have fun. Just don't forget to take care of the kid." To distract herself from the longing for her son, Lexi found solace in Matthew. Their relationship was growing warmer. He took her shopping a couple of times, though he chose her clothes himself and asked her not to fuss in the garden, saying it would ruin her hands. But Lexi didn't listen. She found joy in her work. They eventually won the court case. Matthew asked Lexi to stay for another week, and she agreed, though she thought she should visit Bradley, spend some time with her son. Although it's unlikely to end with just one visit. After all, she'll grab Archie and take him with her, and never let go again. Or maybe it will be even better. Bradley will realize how much he missed them, how much he lacked care, and he'll send Zoe away, and they'll live as they used to. A united, loving family, all together. But at the same time, Lexi understood that things would never be the same as before. Something had broken. Had her husband Bradley always been like this? And why hadn't Lexi noticed it before? He called her again, demanding that Lexi urgently pick up their son, saying that Zoe was tired and couldn't sleep at night, that he was wrong about Lexi, thinking she was a great mother. Lexi, you should take care of him since you gave birth to him. Not live with some manual. Your main goal is to take care of your son. Where is it seen that a lawyer lives with a client? Or was there something between you already? Lexi, there was nothing between us. Bradley, you're his father, just as much a parent as I am. Zoe is your woman now. You should share all the burdens and responsibilities. Isn't that right? You're to blame for what he's like. Bradley suddenly shouted. Maybe he's not even mine. There was never anything like this in our family. I'll order a DNA test tomorrow, Lexi. If he's not my son, I'll take everything from you. You'll be raising him alone. But I've been raising him alone already. With your mother, she replied softly, and Bradley insulted her one last time before hanging up. Lexi desperately wanted to retaliate against him. She felt hurt and longed for the baby. Tomorrow, she would go to him and take Archie back, and also file for divorce. She wanted Bradley to feel as much pain as she did. And Lexi came up with a plan. That evening, they sat by the fireplace again. It had become their tradition. Lexi wore the dress that Matthew liked particularly. Short, creamy, with a bow at the neck. She styled her hair. This hairstyle was his favorite. Lexi had a plan, and she intended to follow it. The plan worked. Wine, embrace, kisses. Then they moved to the couch. Lexi was hardly nervous. This was her revenge. Her promise to herself that everything between her and Bradley was over from now on. But she almost forgot about her motivation because she enjoyed everything that was happening. Matthew was attentive, as if sensing her, and did what she needed. She didn't want and couldn't stop him. In the morning, Lexi woke up in his arms. He smiled and kissed her. Good morning. And where did that grim and unpleasant man go? Good morning. Do you regret it? No, I don't regret it. He stroked Lexi's cheek. Listen, maybe you'll stay. What do you mean? She asked, surprised. We agreed it's temporary. Why move? I don't know. Matthew shrugged. I'm just suggesting. You'll take the child, and you'll live here with me. You won't be able to handle it. Archie is terribly restless. Lexi laughed. And he's also special. I know. The man replied calmly. Layla told me. She admires you for not giving up working, achieving something, and still having such a son. And anyway, I love children. Wanted my own, but it didn't work out. Worked too much. It's strange, Matthew. I don't know anything about you. Lexi sat down and ran her fingers through her disheveled hair. It didn't help, and she still had a real mess on her head. Why did people in movies always look so beautiful in the mornings? Why teach people unrealistic standards? I'll tell you. He darkened again. But you may not like everything. Understand, but that's for me to decide. Lexi remarked. I'm off to work today, and I'll be back for dinner. Then we'll discuss further prospects. Bring your Archie here. I'll hire a nanny if needed. All right. Lexi hugged Matthew and rubbed her cheek against his chest. I'll be waiting. The man left, leaving Lexi alone. She tidied up a bit, drank tea in the garden, sitting directly on the ground, spreading a thick fluffy blanket. But what if he's right? Lexi suddenly realized that she really liked Matthew. She liked him more and more, and not because of money. Being with him felt safe. Yes, everyone has their quirks, as if she didn't have any herself. But he was willing to accept her and her child, and he didn't care that she was still married. Maybe he doesn't even value the bonds of marriage. Although how many divorces does he have behind him? Could she possibly break this trend? Lexi laughed at herself. She's already thinking about a wedding. Well, typical woman. They've only known each other for a little while, and she's already mentally assessing the prospects for a long marriage while being married to another man. But is she really married? Being married means feeling behind a strong wall, feeling support and receiving help. And Bradley, he just distanced himself. I wonder if Zoe is the first woman he's cheated on her with. After all, Lexi wouldn't have known about her if she hadn't come then. Lexi decided to take a work. It's easier to think that way. Although, what's there to think about? Maybe take a risk. With Bradley, nothing will work out anyway. Tomorrow she'll go to her husband and take her son and bring him here, to Matthew's place. For some reason, Lexi was sure that everything would be different with Matthew. Alice. Alice, is that you? Lexi suddenly heard a woman's voice behind her but didn't turn around. At the same time, the woman almost ran after Lexi. She even heard her heavy breathing. Strange. There seemed to be no one on the street. Maybe someone's calling their cat Alice. The woman passed Lexi and stood opposite her. Tall, plump, about 40 years old, dressed in a tracksuit. She looked at Lexi with bewilderment. Alice, you're mistaking me for someone else. Oh my God. The woman crossed herself. And I thought you were Alice. It's uncanny. Who's Alice? Lexi asked. I thought I saw Alice. I was just surprised to see her in the garden. The woman continued. I thought they'd cured her after all. She passed away, didn't she? Matthew told me himself. He used to come to me in the evenings, crying. Hold on. Please explain calmly. I don't understand anything. Lexi asked the stranger. Oh, my goodness. Just like Alice. The woman crossed herself again for some reason. You're her spitting image. Come with me. I live nearby. I'll show you something. And Lexi slowly followed the woman. Alice, the same wife of Matthew whom he adored, who caused him so much pain. My name is Fran. I've known Matthew for a long time. He's a good man, just has a tough fate. God forbid my son falls in love with someone like Alice, Fran said. Oh, she was heartless. No other way to put it. I thought maybe something was wrong with her head. How else to explain all this? And he, like a fool, fell in love with her. He used to come to me sometimes. Well, to have a drink when he was really down. And he'd tell me about her. She almost slept with his driver, dated other men. Wait, but he bought this house after her death. Lexi was surprised. Yes, I worked for him as a housekeeper. He was completely different before Alice. A kind, open man. But now, by the way, Matthew gave me the house for a good job. It's small, but I like it. It's right nearby. to visit him. And you, feel free to come in. My, oh my, you're like her real sister, in height, eyes, and hair. Can you believe it? Wait, he gave you the house? Lexi interrupted the woman. Just like that? Well, yes, why not? That's him. He has money. He even spends a lot on charity. Donates things to orphanages. For example, he's a good manual, but after Alice, he became so unpleasant. Lexi worked into the narrow hallway. Fran's house was next to Matthew's, though much smaller. Come into the living room. I'll be right there, Fran said. Lexi obediently entered the living room and sat on the couch. For some reason, it felt dark. Fran appeared a couple of minutes later, holding several photographs in her hand. Here, look, I saved these, just in case. Matthew threw away all her photos, didn't want to remember. Here, take a look. From the photograph, she saw herself, only dressed differently. The same dresses Matthew asked Lexi to wear. Oh my God. The guest whispered. Yeah, it's unbelievable. How did you end up here anyway? Fran asked. Well, I'm a lawyer. He was in a legal battle with his ex-wife, Diane. Oh, I see. Diane, Fran nodded. Well, unbelievable. You look just like Alice. Like two peas in a pod. I hope you're not like her though. I don't understand what kind of love he had for her. A sick kind of love. It enchanted him. I see. Lexi nodded. It's all clear to me now. What's clear? Fran was surprised. Oh, nothing. Lexi got up from the couch and handed the photos to Fran. Thank you. Lexi returned to the cottage. She stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. Matthew found a copy of his Alice in Lexi. He didn't care about Lexi, as long as she served as a living reminder of his great love. That's all. A love that nearly drove him mad. The woman packed her things and called a taxi. Her job was done. She could go home now, to her son. She didn't need anyone else. Not Bradley, not Matthew. Now her family was just her son Archie. And maybe Selena. She left the laptop Matthew had given her. She had no use for it. She wasn't Alice and didn't want to take someone else's place. And she had convinced herself that the man had really loved her. But Matthew had seen that other one. Maybe he would have asked her not only to wear the same dresses, but also to behave the same way. Perhaps she would have had to sleep with Tony, for example, to complete the experience. The woman arrived in town, dropped off her things, and went to pick up Archie. Bradley practically shoved the baby at her. I'm terribly tired. I thought you wouldn't come, Bradley said. Lexi hugged her son close. Her heart raced faster. She didn't even realize she missed Archie so much, and Zoe couldn't handle it. Lexi asked indifferently. She left. Bradley looked down. Yesterday, she couldn't take it anymore. Said she couldn't live like this. So, life with a successful lawyer suited her. But when a child came with him, she couldn't handle it anymore. Right, and Lexi rubbed her nose against Archie's head. He seemed to have grown a bit. Her dear son. Listen, come back, Bradley whispered. We're still a family. Lexi didn't say anything to him. She turned around and headed home. What could she have said anyway? That they were not a family at all. That she could no longer trust anyone. That she was disappointed in Bradley and would always think that he might propose opening up their relationship again. At home, Lexi calmed down. Archie completely captivated her attention. They would never part again. Not for anything in the world. How foolish she had been. Everything had changed too quickly and not in the direction Lexi had hoped for. 3 days passed. She stayed home with Archie, not feeling like going to work, and her boss gave her leave. She had to wait for Selena, who had inexplicably gone to Chicago. Everyone had abandoned her, even her mother-in-law. After 3 days, Selena called and said she would be back soon, and not alone. Lexi. I met Bradley's father. He's been divorced for a long time. Well, we decided to give it another try. Why not? There were feelings, Real feelings. Some good news at last. Lexi smiled. I'm glad. And I hope everything works out for you. And on the morning of the fourth day, someone rang Lexi's doorbell. She was sure it was either Selena or Bradley. But when she opened the door, it was Matthew. Hi, the man said softly. Hello, Lexi replied. Fran told me everything. Why did you notice me? Oh, please wait a moment, Archie whimpered. Lexi rushed to him. The baby immediately calmed down in his mother's arms. She returned to Matthew with Archie. He's cute, he remarked. Yes, thank you. Lexi kissed her son, who curiously inspected the unfamiliar man. All babies are adorable. All of them are very, very cute. Lexi, listen, this isn't what you think. It started out that way, and then, what then? You know, I don't want to replace anyone. I am who I am. Lexi interrupted him. Tears welled up in her eyes for some reason. I know you are not like her. She never cooked, never took care of the garden. And if she had a child like this, she would have abandoned him without a second thought. But I loved her. Yes, and you still do. Don't you? Lexi asked. No, I thought I did. But then you came along, Lexi. At first, I thought I was going crazy. Couldn't stop looking at you. Then, after that evening at the restaurant, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her. And I decided to invite you over. Especially since Diane gave me a good reason. But I can't be without you. I mean, I could, of course, but I don't want to. Lexi looked into his eyes. Lexi, believe me, please. Something stirred inside her. She realized Matthew was telling her the truth. The man continued. You and her are very different, Lexi. I didn't think so. Not to this extent. Nothing in common. I don't need her. But you, Lexi, and am I needed? She hugged her son tighter. It seems so. The man nodded. Just give me some time. Archie reached out his arms to Matthew. Lexi laughed. It seems he likes you. He usually shies away from strangers, and I like you, Lexi. Just let me prove it to you. The woman nodded. All right, I'll give you 6 months, and then we'll see. He gently patted Archie's head. Can I hold the little one? You can. You can even come in and have some tea. And while I'm at it, I'll see how you handle kids. Lexi didn't need 6 months. She divorced Bradley and became Matthew's lawful wife after just 4 months. By then, Lexi knew for sure she was the